That's fine. Okay, we can get rid of that. Cool. Oh, interesting. I guess I will have to be aware of that too. Okay, I'll wait a little while so that anyone who's joining, because I said it could be as late as 8:30. I won't wait till then because I have some little things I still have to take care of for this setting up this stream. Let's see. So I actually keep a list of lessons that I've learned in Magic, or actually for many things in life, but this one is my Magic list. So today I learned that there is this decision tree that you should go down for what to name with Meddling Mage against Tess, and that came from talking with some Tess players. So actually, it goes like this: game 1 and to some extent games 2 and 3 prefer. Let's see, what is it? If active giver or mom prefer naming Burning Wish. And the reason for this... Wait, no. Sorry, that's wrong. Prefer naming Wishclaw Talisman. And the reason for that is that if you have Mom, then you don't have to worry about having Grapeshot ping off your Meddling Mage. So then you just want to stop the combo from happening. And it's much harder to Infernal Tutor for Ad Nauseam than it is to Wishclaw for it. And they can Burning Wish for Infernal Tutor, but that's like harder, I mean. So you want to name Wishclaw Talisman. But if no giver, Mom, and yes, Force of Will, then you name actually Burning Wish. Because in that case, what you want to do is leave open the spell that Force of Will would punish harder and would be least likely to be veiled. So that's like, if it's more expensive, it's better. And so letting them pay 6 to tutor up Ad Nauseam and then cast it is better than being forced to force every Burning Wish. Because you can't even let the Wish resolve because the target has Storm. And then if no giver, no Force of Will, then you're back to naming Talisman again. And the reason for this is that if you don't have anything, then you're just trying to like, I hope this mage like does everything for me. And then Talisman stops them from casting Ad Nauseam as reliably, so then they won't be as likely to be able to find Chain of Vapor. Whereas they're like about 50% likely to find it if you just name Burning Wish and let them get Ad Nauseam for free. Okay, so that's one thing. Now, let's see, anything else I need to take care of before... okay. So I actually made a Twitter just because, I mean, I don't know anyone on Twitter. I mean, I'm sure I know people on Twitter, but I'm not connected to them right now. But I made the Twitter because one of my, I guess, acquaintances in this legacy chat here posted something interesting about my list. Let me see if I can bring it up. Here we are. And while I wasn't particularly interested in responding to some of the more colorful comments, I did want to say that I was going to explain how this deck works. And so that's why I made the Twitter. Maybe I'll actually use it. We'll see how that goes. Where are the comments? Okay, this is like Twitter 101. Like, I'm learning how to use it. What the fuck? You would think that by clicking on this 10, it would show the 10 comments. What's this thing? Retweets? Okay. And that's likes. And that's if I want to send it to someone. Okay. Well. Huh. I'm finding this unintuitive, but maybe it just comes with time. Click on the timestamp showing when the tweet was published. Okay. Oh, okay. That's pretty unintuitive. You would think that clicking the number of comments would expand the comments. That's really weird. But this was probably the most colorful of the responses. But yeah, I'm not gonna respond to that. That's a silly that's a silly comment. I don't know what happened there, but okay. So I made a Twitter, and if there's anything else that people think I should include on either the overlay of my stream or in like this detail section here, like as a panel, I would be all ears because I don't really know anything about streaming. So please help me out. Let's see, is there anything else here that I need to do? Okay, nope. So I'm going to start explaining my deck choices. Okay, so this is, I guess, another way of looking at the list. So I guess giving like the most high-level overview, like we've got 18 lands, and then the reason why we have 18 lands is because I noticed someone said like, look at that mana base, like it's risky, I guess was the implication. So look at that mana base, but the reason why there's like few lands is because first of all, I don't have Wasteland, so as compared to Delver that also has 18 lands, my plan is to keep all of my lands, and also as compared to Delver that has 18 lands, I have a Tithe and 4 Aetherval, which function as nothing other than mana sources ever. They have instead usually 3 more Ponders and then 1 to 2 like or 0 to 2 Preordains. And moreover, they have Wasteland, and so their curve is maybe like a little bit lower than mine, but we want similar things. They can function with 2 lands and probably prefer 3. And I could function with 2 lands in some cases, but really need 3. So then correspondingly I have more mana sources. So I think that I balanced this about right. As far as the choice of like fetch lands versus like dual lands and basics, so several things went into that. I can't have any swamps because a swamp would be unable to contribute to paying the cost of all of the Meddling Mages and the Leonin Relic Order, as well as some sideboard cards, as well as anything that costs a single mana, because I don't have anything that costs a single mana that's black. So it's clear that there should be no swamp. So then if I'm going to have basics, what basics should I have then? Well, some combination of plains and islands is what we've deduced so far. Now, does it make sense to have 3 or more basics? No. Maybe this will help the light. Does that help? Maybe a little bit. No, that's not good to have 3 or more basics, because you won't actually fetch them all. This deck has intense color requirements, and so you don't have time or enough fetch lands to go get 3 basics. So then you only need 2, and you do. So then I guess the other question is, should I have 1 or fewer basics? So obviously having 0 is extremely dangerous, and then having 1 is also fairly dangerous because you want to represent the 2 main colors in basics, so that if something like Blood Moon hits, then you have at least one basic of the corresponding color. Um, and then you also want 2 basics because you want to punish Assassin's Trophy. So I think 2 basics is we've deduced we should have 2 basics. So then what combination of plains and islands should it be? Well, one of each because, like I said, with Blood Moon you want that diversity. You definitely want the 1 Caracas, but you don't want more because these could collide. And then from there you want 1 of each black dual land, and so the rest of the details that you have to fill in, like sort of algebraically, is now I have, what is it, 13 slots left, and they are distributed between fetch lands and tundra. Now, if I do have fetch lands, obviously first I'll max Flooded Strand, and then after that, Marsh Flats and Polluted Delta should be roughly equal, but if it's an odd number, then Polluted Delta should get the 1 more, because Polluted Delta fetches Island, which is more important because Island contributes to all of the double color cost requirements, whereas when you fetch Plains, you're committing to not playing Baleful Strix on time. So, Island is slightly more important. So, how did I know, though, to have 9 fetch lands? That's because when you have instead 8 fetch lands, then there's like not as much flexibility versus with Brainstorm, but also with getting the right colors. And when you have 10 fetch lands, what tends to happen is that combined with Tithe and perhaps even the Tithe from the sideboard, you run out of targets to fetch. So 9 fetch lands is this balance that I found. And once you have 9 fetch lands, then you know that the rest of the slots should be tundras. So that's how I figured out the mana base. And then from there, the deck sort of... There are certain cards that just automatically are in, like 4 Vials, 4 Baleful Strix, 4 Meddling Mage. Those were easy to see. 4 Brainstorm, that was easy to see. And 4 Recruiters. I mean, I'm not giving like a historically accurate reconstruction of my deck. It's not like this is the way I actually constructed it. It's more like I'm giving a sort of post facto justification based on what I know now. But in reality, the discovery was like a long process starting with Blue-White Tempo that first had equipment, and we can go into the history later, but if you're like building the deck now, this is the justification for each of the pieces. So so you definitely want these core 4 ofs. And then same with Force of Will. Like, I didn't originally have Force of Will in the first Esper version of this list, but I would say that right now it clearly needs to be in. And so that's not something I'll like very justify in great detail. And 3 Swords to Plowshare is the same thing. So I guess the only real thing remaining to talk about is Tithe versus Ponder, and the number and distribution of givers versus mothers, and then also the individual tutor targets and how they're used. So as far as Tithe versus Ponder, so originally my list had 1 Ponder and 0 Tithes, and I was noticing that an unfortunate number of times I was pretty much pondering to find land. And so then, why don't I just like get card advantage with the more specific card that caters to the need that I have? Tithe is, most of the time it's 2 lands, and it's only not 2 lands if you're ahead on, or equal or ahead on lands. Often this means only 2 lands if you're actually strictly ahead on lands, because you could do the hold priority trick with fetches. So Tithe is an anti-wasteland card because the wasteland player spends a mana by tapping the wasteland and not getting mana out of it to waste you. And then you respond by like replacing the land that you lost for the cost of the same 1 mana, and then also getting an extra land. And the wasteland player they're not just trying to like 1-for-1 you, because wasteland as like a straight up 1-for-1 is a bad deal. Like, I wouldn't play wasteland in this list. The player who's playing wasteland obviously wants you to not be able to play Magic the Gathering. So by simply even being able to play Magic the Gathering in response, you're punishing them. but you're double punishing them if you also get card advantage, like, as a response. So that's what Tithe does. And so Tithe is a one of without sideboarding because you don't want collisions with them. But there is... I just remembered that it's a good practice to check chat. Make sure no one's saying anything. Okay. Cool. I don't know why that was loading. So Tithe is a card advantage spell, and this deck wants that. For a while, I was actually playing the card Disrupt. For those of you who may not know what that is, it's a cantrip card that counters instants and sorceries, unless its controller pays 1. So I was basically looking for any way to get 1 mana 2-for-1s, because that's what this deck wants. Like, I don't care what card I get, if it's someone else's instant or sorcery, or my opponent's instant or sorcery, or if I get a land. I don't care. Just give me card advantage, and give it to me cheap, and I'll let my deck figure out how to like redistribute its resources so that the raw card advantage I get is actually useful. So like if I have extra lands, I can recruiter a more expensive target. I can choose to use the Soul Herder loop, which requires mana for me to actually like play the things out, as opposed to Palace Jailer, which is card advantage that like doesn't require me to keep spending mana. Because for one thing, the creature exiles immediately. I don't have to like pay to do that. So like, can I make the more expensive but safer choice with Soul Herder? Because I don't stand a chance to lose Monarch if I'm using Soul Herder. Can I use both modes of Brazen Bar on time? Can I maybe use Peacekeeper to like do something other than hard lock out my opponent, just like as a tempo play? Well, not really tempo, but like as an intermediate solution, because I have extra mana. Can I do that? Can I play more cantrips to find what I need, or to use Brainstorm to like get rid of the extra lands? Maybe I can somehow entice my opponent into wastelanding me, which doesn't require much because like they're not going to say like, oh, he has extra lands, I'm not going to waste him, because Delver's not there to play like a 5 mana versus 5 mana game, right? So they'll still waste me. It's just, can I have like more lands then? So that's good. I can play around Daze if I have extra mana, but if I don't, I may need to take greater risks. If I'm scrying off of Charming Prince, then I can choose to not have lands, right? There's so many ways that this deck can take raw resources and then turn them into what you need, but you have to get them, and Tithe does that. So that's an explanation there. As far as Giver versus Mother, I think that one is pretty easy to explain. It's just I wanted 3 Giver effects in total, because with 4, if you look at the hypergeometric distribution, maybe we should pull that up. So let's say that you're going to draw like 10 cards. And so you go over here, you say this population size is 60, that's the size of the deck. And then you say that you have 4. So we're saying like, what if I had 4 Giver effects? And then you're saying like, I'm looking at... We can look at 7 cards, but the reality is we should maybe look at 8, 9, or 10 instead, because that's how much you've drawn before like you start getting things rolling. Now, what's the probability of 2? Because having 2 is kind of a waste. I don't really need that. So notice here that the probability of having at least 2 is 6%, as compared to when you have 3, it's only 3%. So it actually about doubles. And compare that to what happens to the probability of having 1. So with 3 copies, I have to calculate. With 3 copies, that's 31%. I guess we can look at exactly 1. So 28%. As compared to with 4 copies, it's 33%. So you'll notice that while the probability of having at least 2 is about double. The probability of having one exactly as you go from 3 to 4 copies only increases by a factor of like maybe 1.2. So what you generally, when you go to 4 copies of something, you are asking to get 2 copies of it. Not like even most of the time, it's obviously only 6% in your opening hand. But what you're most drastically increasing is your chance to get 2 copies of it. And I don't want 2 copies of it, so I'm happy to run 3. I'm happy to play games that don't involve having this card or these cards at all, but I don't really ever want to, unless my opponent kills one of them. So, 3 copies it is. Then, givers are immune to Plague Engineers, so we're going to do that as like either 2 or 3. But then why 1 Mother? Well, for the diversity for Recruiter, and also because draw diversity. In general, if 2 cards are like seeming to be pretty close to equal, you want to diversify, because if you then draw both cards, then you have a choice, and with choices you can optimize. Like, I'm going to choose what's better for this situation. If I had Giver and Mother, let's say, and my opponent has Plague Engineer naming Human, then I could play the Giver. If I had 2 Mothers, then I wouldn't be able to play anything. On the other hand, if my opponent is playing a lot of removal spells, but is maybe it's about to be their turn 4, and they want to play like Jace the Mind Sculptor, and they don't want to bounce my Giver effect. So if I then play Mother, it becomes like really inconvenient for them. Like, now I have to either not play Jace or I have to bounce the Mother. So depending on the situation, one can be better than the other, and by having a mixture of both, then when you draw 2, then you can choose which one's better for the situation. So that's that. And then the targets, you'll see this in the example matches that we're going to look over tonight. But I guess to quickly go over them, Relic Warder, that one's pretty obvious. Remorseful Cleric is for graveyard decks. Now, Charming Prince is actually for a strange, or maybe not like totally obvious situation, which is where either you need to gain life, I guess. I don't really try to scry 2 with that too much, but if I open with it and I don't have a better turn 2 play, then that happens sometimes. But it's really for when you played Vial on turn 1, and then on turn 3 it's at 2, but you don't have a 2-drop, and so you're resolving a Recruiter trigger because you hardcast Recruiter on turn 3. Because if you don't play Recruiter, then you're just going to pass, so you just play Recruiter. And then you're thinking like, well, I don't want to lose the chain because I don't have any other gas in my hand. But at the same time, it's a waste to not like generate 2 mana with my Vial. So what am I going to do? I'm going to get Charming Prince and like sort of interject the Prince for 2 free mana from the Vial as a 2/2, and then continue with the Soul Herder combo later, or something like that. Sometimes you can also use it as protection from removal spells with Vial, and other times you can use it to protect yourself from Terminus. I'll go over that when I'm going over like specific combinations of cards. And you can also use it to like pump Soul Herder. So it has a lot of different uses. And then Peacekeeper, I'll go over. That's like really complicated. I'll go over it as I discuss combinations and how to play against certain decks. Flicker Wisp is kind of the same as Charming Prince, but it functions in a different situation. It's like, so of course it's like an answer to any permanent, like Chalice, or like things that you need to be gone for 1 turn. Like, that's the same as Death and Taxes. But what is specific to the way this deck plays is sometimes you're thinking, I need not to die to Delver. Like, I need to preserve my life total, but I also can't afford to give up my chain. So Flicker Wisp will do that for you. Or maybe I need to not die to Delver. I don't really care about my chain, but I do want card advantage, so Baleful Strix would also work, but then it's game 2, and I don't want to play into Pyroblast. Then Flicker Wisp will be the only card that does that for you, in this list anyway. Brazen Borrower is for depths. But obviously you can you probably won't be tutoring it all that much against anything else, but you could use it if you drew it. You could pitch it to Force of Will at the very worst. Another situation where it comes up is when you have a lot of mana, and you've just started getting your Soul Herder engine rolling. So you need something that you could like use right away before you untap, actually. And the only thing with like Flash and an instant adventure is Brazen Borrower. Like Engineers for a lot of stuff. Jailer is for control decks, and also if there's some creature you need to get rid of. And Soul Herder is kind of the main engine. So discussing the sideboard options, I think everything here is pretty self-explanatory. I went over the Enlightened Tutor package a lot in the early 2010s. If anyone wants to hear about that, I'll repeat what I said then, but it's pretty much just a way to save sideboard space. Painful Truths is like for control matchups, and as a general support card, when I don't have enough to sideboard in, like, okay, Painful Truths doesn't suck, so I'll board that in. And then Damping Sphere is a concession to green, colorless Eldrazi decks. And Emrakul, which caught a lot of eyes, as with that Twitter. I changed my game in Twitch. Oh. Okay. Wait, what does my game say? Does it say Hearthstone? Because that's what would make sense. Where does it say that? Thank you for that recommendation, Nathan. Playing. It should say like playing something. Okay. All right, let's go to my home, I guess. No. All right. Twitch dashboard. What the? This is not what I was expecting. I guess they updated the look. Okay. Oh. Whoa. Wouldn't you think that what you're playing would be like part of the stream info? Ugh. Edit stream information. Oh, this is dumb. Okay. Up on Twitch. Okay.
On your dashboard, you will probably find...
That is not what my dashboard looks like, though. Okay, how did we access this dashboard?
And on your dashboard...
Oh, okay. So it's over here somewhere. Whoops. What? Dashboard. Yes, I think that is it. Wait. Okay, this is clearly not working the way that I thought it would. Anyone want to tell me where I can make this change? Edit. Okay, let's try that. Maybe it's just oh, okay. It doesn't say like playing. It's just category. Okay. Well, I mean, it will say playing, but only once I've filled it out as category. Okay. Okay, so it actually said nothing. I thought it might have said Hearthstone, because I used to play that. Okay. So back to what I was saying. Thank you for that call out. That's important. So the one thing that is perhaps most polarizing about this list, and was only in my most recent edition, is Emrakul. So let me explain that. So in the past, I have been playing leagues and challenges where every time that I didn't get what I wanted, like I didn't get the 5-0 or I didn't get the top 8, it was because I ran into too many Hogak lists. And so I was thinking, how can I solve that problem? And I was running through solutions people had suggested, like play Yixlid Jailer, or like play Leyline of the Void, and none of these things seemed like I could solve the problem in just one card. And of course, because I didn't play against Hogak on in the challenge or in any league since I made the change, it's not clear to me if Emrakul will actually do that. But it already is starting to be clear that Emrakul is in any case reasonable, even if it doesn't exactly accomplish the shutout that I want of Hogak. It's good against show lists, and that came up, as we'll see as I go over example games. And it's also good against Painter, which is going to be rarer because Painter is not as much of a common deck. So, you know, it's scoring like random little points here and there, but it's mostly about countering Crab and Altar of Dementia. So the reason that's important is because so I have this like concept I keep in my own head at least about multipliers. So when I have a sideboard card, how much is the efficacy of that sideboard card being increased by the context of the other main deck cards and sideboard cards? So the draw frequency is often the source of a multiplier that's greater than 1, which means that I'm getting like more bang for my buck. So like I have 4 Recruiter of the Guards in the main, and so anything that's recruitable in the sideboard gets some multiplier. Now the multiplier won't be 5 because like that's not what happens to the probabilities of drawing the 1 copy when you have 5 ways to draw it. As you could like figure that out by looking at this hypergeometric distribution calculator. But it'll be, I think, something like around 3 or 4. And so you can get increased mileage from your sideboard in this way. Now, that only applies if it's like a unique copy, so Peacekeeper, like, it wouldn't apply. You would still say that multiplier is something greater than 1 against black decks, which is relevant against Hogak, because if they discard it for you, then having the second copy be tutorable is actually something you would do. So if you're looking to tutor both copies, then you can also attribute a somewhat lesser multiplier to the second copy as well. And so this also applies to Leonin Relic Order. At the moment, I chose not to take advantage of like the Recruiter framework in any other way. But another example of this concept is Enlightened Tutors. So the Enlightened Tutors themselves are the context that I was talking about earlier, and the things that get the multipliers are Deafening Silence, Grafdigger's Cage, and Damping Sphere. So that's a way to conserve sideboard space, like I mentioned. Emrakul is the same. So Emrakul gets a huge multiplier against Painter and against Hogak because the object is to not draw it, and not drawing it happens most of the time, especially if I'm trying to not draw it. Then I'll be like putting it back on Brainstorms, and I guess that's the only way I could influence, or like not pondering it, I guess. So that's how I could influence not drawing it, not keeping it with prints, stuff like that. So when you aim to not draw something, and you try to do that against a matchup that's trying to close out the game pretty quickly against you, not drawing that something is pretty probable, and so it gets a huge multiplier. This is the case with Hogak, and what I'm trying to do there is to make it so that Peacekeeper is game against Hogak. You want a Meddling Mage, usually Abrupt Decay, although I lost a match to my finals opponent, White Faces, because I didn't research his list ahead of time to know that he was playing not Abrupt Decays, but actually Assassin's Trophies. They usually have a mix, so then you can't just like hard lock them out, but you can still lock them out with high probability. And if you get like a Mother of Runes or a Giver of Runes, then they are usually just out for good. Because this is not a deck that's like suited to natural drawing anything. It wants to dump everything in its graveyard. So maybe it has one answer. It's not good at answering creatures. And why should it be? It plays bridges. It doesn't want to kill your creatures. So it only wants to kill your creatures if you like make it an absolute emergency for it to do so. And that's what Peacekeeper is. So Emrakul also gets a slight multiplier against Show and Tell, because even though the only way to use it is to natural draw it, by being free cards are easier to find because you have more time to find them, because you don't have to pay for them, so then you can spend your time casting things like Painful Truth, Brainstorm, Ponder, and so on. So that's the rationale there. And so now, let me get some water, and then I will talk about some common tricks with the deck. Let me see if there's any chat interaction. Whoops. Okay. So I guess eventually I should come up with a way to have, like, I guess someone suggested 2 monitors, but my desk's kind of small, so maybe I need to get a new desk too. We'll see. Okay, so the common tricks with this deck are, let's go over the Peacekeeper ones. So I guess first we should talk about, when is Peacekeeper an automatic win, and when is it an automatic win in combination with some other card, and when is it just really good, and then the rest of the cases it's just not so good. It's like conditionally useful. So it's an automatic win against Dredge. It's an automatic win against Merfolk, and by this I mean like no other cards are required. Game 2, I guess it's only like a win against Merfolk if you have some protection from Dismember. It's an automatic win against Elves, usually. Some builds run the 4-mana Garruk, but it's usually an automatic win against Elves. And because of Oko, it's only very good against Infect. Like, it's only a lockout if you also have, like, a way to deal with Oko, counter it, or protection from Oko or whatever. Okay. And it's also, against most Show and Tell builds, it's also an automatic win that they can't even counter, and they don't know that they have to play around it. I mean, I guess now they would know because they can see the list, but are they really not going to cast Show and Tell just because I might have drawn Peacekeeper? Probably not. So, when they play Show and Tell, they are risking that I might show Peacekeeper, or even that I might show Recruiter if I have a Vial ticking up, and then they can't kill me the exact turn that they like show Griselbrand or something, and then next turn I Vial in the Peacekeeper, and they may have like 20 cards or whatever, but it's too late. So that's it. It only is breakable if they either main deck Bounce or something, or have Cunning Wish. And in that case, usually you shouldn't try. In most other cases, you're going to try to one-up your opponent. Like, okay, they could answer Peacekeeper, but I can answer their answer, so then it's a lock. But as for Show and Tell, you don't try to one-up them, because Peacekeeper is like this very coincidental lock. Like, it only works because they have exactly 0 answers to it. If they so much as had 1 answer to it, then the fact that they draw 20 will actually matter, or draw 14 and have 20 cards will actually matter. And then once they do actually draw that card, like, okay, maybe they won't draw it because, even if they draw 14, they only see, like, half their deck. But if they did draw it, they would certainly have, like, all the forces in the world to make sure that everything you try to do to protect your Peacekeeper doesn't resolve. So, you don't try to protect it. Like, you just say, if you have the answer, then you can get rid of Peacekeeper and then make me sack 6 permanents or whatever. But, if they don't draw it, then they die. And they don't even die slowly. So that's the thing, a combination I want to go over. You're not trying to deck them, because actually that would fail against Emrakul. And it would also fail against any deck that has Green Sun Zenith in it, as Elves does and as Maverick does. But a common combination you use here is that you can either try to build up Soul Herder to be 20/20, and then on your upkeep, respond to your Peacekeeper trigger by giving your Soul Herder protection from all relevant colors. In this case, you want to make sure to do white last, if white is necessary. And then once they say okay to all of this, then you sack the Peacekeeper and you go. But that can take a while, and there are quicker solutions. I do want to cover one detail in this solution, which is that this solution is sometimes what you get stuck implementing against Maverick. And if that happens, then you need to be aware that they can get Maze of Ith, and so colorless may need to be one of the colors that you have protection from. So that is thoughts on... the dog. I like dogs. So, yeah, I also think that the Grafdigger's Cage effect is too late on turn 3. What makes Grafdigger's Cage good is that it answers the graveyard decks, and the graveyard decks are really fast. So, yeah, having no multiplier and also being probably later than most of the decks I'm afraid of would probably not work. And you're also paying for like the stats, but it's a legend, which is like risky against decks that you would actually care about the stats against. 3 toughness is also an unfortunate number in Legacy, because everything in Legacy tends to do either 1 or 3, except for Punishing Fire. Oko tokens do 3, Lightning Bolt, Chain Lightning do 3. And then Plague Engineer does 1, things like that. And then 2 power is also fairly uncommon, although creature combat in general is not really as relevant as like a direct damage spell. So having 3 toughness, like you're paying for that, and I would actually pay to not have that. I would actually rather have 2 toughness here. So yeah, I don't think that card is going to make the cut. So what was I saying? Oh yeah, Peacekeeper combinations. So the faster Peacekeeper combination that doesn't require you to have to wait for the 20/20 is when you have Soul Herder, you can flicker Charming Prince, and then, or you can blink Charming Prince, and then have that use the Flicker mode on Flicker Wisp in your end step. Then Flicker Wisp will come back on your opponent's end of turn, and at that point you can Flicker Peacekeeper. Then Peacekeeper will not come back until your end of turn, and so your opponent has to obey Peacekeeper, but you don't. So that's actually how it usually goes. Like, if by default, that's the first thing that I search for when I'm looking for like a way to win after I've locked the game out. So this happens a lot against Maverick. There have been games where like my opponent just had everything go their way, like Swords to Plowshares every time that they needed to get rid of something, and then like I need to interact with their equipment, but then I can only Relic Order it, and then they kill the Relic Order or something, or they like get more equipment than I have answers to, and they've started to, like, next turn they're going to like get GK counters, and then after that there's no more because my Relic Order's already gone. Like, everything looks like it's going to shit, and then I realize that this is coming like a few turns at a time, and so I decided to stop playing a fair game, and I just go like, okay, Meddling Mage naming Swords to Plowshares. Okay, so now they can't remove Meddling Mage, and they can't remove anything else either. Okay, the next thing I do is play Peacekeeper, so now their whole deck does nothing, but for the moment, like, they were wasting me out of mana, like, everything was bad, and so Peacekeeper I could barely afford, and certainly I'm not going to be playing anything else while I'm paying the upkeep. But that's okay, because they have no game plan left, so it's just now the game's locked out. Like on paper metrics, it looks like things are quote unquote bad because like they're developing and then I'm not. But actually, nothing they develop ever matters. So then eventually I get like more lands or I get a vial. And then eventually I draw a Soul Herder. Like, I don't have to have any of this at the time that I lock. I can just have Meddling Mage and Peacekeeper. And then, as time goes on, I get these other pieces. Whenever they happen to come is fine, as long as they're not, like, literally the bottom card of the deck or something, which they pretty much couldn't be because I have Recruiters. Then I go and kill them in the way that I described. So what can you do when one of the flicker effects is gone? Then you can't do like the flicker Peacekeeper but only on your turn trick with Soul Herder repeatedly. In that case, you can go for like a twice as fast kill with the other flicker piece instead of waiting for the 2020 trick. What you do is you get to like a 10-10 and then you do the same thing twice. The first time you flicker your own, you like play the Charming Prince or whatever, and you flicker out your Peacekeeper. And then the second time, you just sack the Peacekeeper after having all your giver effects resolve. So yeah, that's like pretty much the major combinations there. And so the more complicated locks are against like Maverick, Merfolk games 2 and 3. The ones where you need to like name the removal first and then go for Peacekeeper. Or have a giver first and then go for Peacekeeper. Like those, Death and Taxes, that's another example. I think that's about it for that. And then the third kind of situation where Peacekeeper gets used is like to keep your monarchy, pretty much. So that actually comes up against Death and Taxes quite often. Like sometimes I'm the monarch and then I don't have Swords to Plowshares named on Meddling Mage. So Peacekeeper isn't just good game. Or, in fact, it isn't even good game against Death and Taxes, even if you do name Swords, because they can flicker your Peacekeeper. So it's against Maverick, it's a lockout. Against Death and Taxes, it's like, I'm going to make it tougher for you to become the monarch, but it's not, like, impossible. So you can use Peacekeeper in that way. So yeah, I think that's a pretty good summary of that combination. And the only other combination I thought was really worth discussing is sequencing. So when you have Soul Herder, oftentimes what comes up is you have only one other Recruiter or Baleful Strix. Or maybe you have both Baleful Strix and Recruiter, but you want to recruit as much as possible as opposed to drawing a random card. And then you're going to play like either a Prince or a Flicker Wisp, but what can you do to make sure that you get the maximum possible outcome from this? So what you want to do there is, in Magic Online, you actually obey the game rules. Like, you put things on the stack instead of just... What often happens in paper is people announce what order they want things to resolve. And so you get used to like these various Soul Herder combinations where you start to remember, and I still mess this up when I'm like trying to play fast, but you start to remember like what needs to go on the stack first, so that way I get the result that I want. And you also, oftentimes I find myself like in the shower or something, and I'm like thinking about what I could do with this combination of cards. Like, how many things can I have exiled at once with 2 flicker effects in my deck? And you need to like run through this logic in your head, like, is there a way I can stack things so that way I get what I want? And those problems are generally like case by case. I don't have a good way to solve them in general. But at least here's the solution for this very common case. You want to flicker Recruiter twice, and you only have 1 Recruiter. What do you do? At your end step, so first of all, in your main phase, you play Flicker Wisp, and then you flicker the Recruiter. Okay. And then at your end step, awaiting to be put on the stack are the return from Flicker Wisp and the Soul Herder ability. And so what you want is you want the return from Flicker Wisp to resolve before the Soul Herder ability targeting Flicker Wisp resolves. So that way, when Flicker Wisp gets blinked, you can then Flicker Recruiter again. So then, once you know that's what you want, then you know that you should put the Soul Herder on the stack first, so that it resolves second. So that's just the thing to be careful of. It's not like... I'm not saying that because I don't think people could derive that. It's not hard to derive, but it's something to watch out for. And if you don't watch out for it, then you might not realize that there's a problem, like a logic problem to solve there. Or you might even know it, as I did, but then failed to solve it because you're playing quickly. You were like running out of time or something. So you want this pattern to be like something that's second nature as you play this deck. There are a lot of other more specific patterns, but they're pretty difficult to like say them all. So this deck is, first of all, very weird, and then also pretty difficult to play even once you get over the weirdness. So expect to make a lot of mistakes, and there are going to be things that I say, like for example, this deck really beats Oko, that may not be realized immediately because you might make some mistakes or something, and that's perfectly normal because I made a ton of them. Okay, I'm not going to play any matches today, but I will go over the matches. And the reason I won't play matches is because the league's about to run out of time. Okay, so now let's go over my my tournament performance. Okay. Okay, I don't like how quick this interface is. So here I was playing against Bryant Cook, and so I didn't even have to look it up. I knew that he was playing Tess. So obviously any hand that like doesn't have any interaction with Tess, I'm just gonna mulligan. That's what the first hand was. And then I see this one, and I'm thinking, okay, we've got Meddling Mage, Force of Will, and Remorseful Cleric. I don't think I can do better than that game one, and I even have the Plague Engineer so that if he decides like, okay, I'm gonna go, like I know I have a bad matchup, I'm just gonna try to go as fast as I can before anything's online. I'm gonna make 10 goblins. Then I have a good chance of winning against that too. So this is a good 6. I'm keeping this. And then now I even have the mana for Plague Engineer. Like, things are looking pretty up. But Tess game one is maybe like 50%ish. It's not like great. Okay, so at this point I actually made I'm not going to say it's a mistake, but I made a choice. And the choice was not to force the Wishclaw Talisman, because if I don't force it, as is almost certain he's not going off this turn, because for him to go off this turn through Force of Will would be insane. So there's going to be a next turn, and if I don't force, then I get to play Meddling Mage naming Burning Wish, and they only have one Chain of Vapor in the deck to deal with that. So there's actually like a logic tree that I only sort of using some help with people who actually know Tess. I kind of converged to this idea that when you don't have any protection for the Meddling Mage, like Giver Runes, and you do have Force of Will that you could cast, you should probably name Burning Wish to try to get them to pay a lot into Wishclaw Talisman and then force it. But in this case, if I recall, I end up actually not having a castable Force of Will. Yeah, I definitely didn't. Right? So now, in that case, I think you should name... I think you should actually name Wishclaw Talisman if it's not already in play. But actually, Wishclaw Talisman is already in play. So then, you're not going to name Wishclaw Talisman. You'll just name Burning Wish. And pray, like, no Chain of Vapor. But he's going to get Chain of Vapor. Okay, so blah, 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 he goes off. And because I played Meddling Mage, I can't stop it. So far, I think everything I've done is correct, but like I wouldn't not play Meddling Mage at Force because it's super dangerous against the Veil that I think he ends up pretty much having. Like he had one unknown card when he cast this, but it looked like it was Veil. Okay, so he starts going off, and then eventually he chains this, which gives me back Force of Will, but they already have Veil. So then I think I just lose straight up. He actually exiles the Veil, so it looks for a moment like I have hope, but then that's why I said it looked like his one hidden card was Veil, because he has the second Veil. So actually that means for sure that his one hidden card is Veil. Okay, yeah, so GG. Okay, so Bryant takes game 1, and then... Whoops. Let's go to game 2. Oh, I guess I should discuss my sideboard plan. So, in this case, so we're reading from the test entry here. So we don't want as many... Well, Peacekeeper, like, it stops goblins, but I already have Plague Engineer for that, and you don't want to commit to that too much because they're not committing much to it. Remorseful Cleric is, like, more relevant than Blank, but it's not very good. So I boarded out, and Jailer's too slow. You don't want too many protection effects, and Mom is the worst one because it doesn't block goblins as favorably. Flicker Wisp doesn't do anything, Swords don't do anything. They stop Hope of Ghirapur, but I actually think that Bryant should not board those in, even though, as it turns out, he does. Because he should know that I have Baleful Strix, and I did not have it in the game in which he cast it, and I was forced to actually counter it instead. But it's a bad bet. I think that between Relic Warders and Baleful Strix, all of which have been in many of my lists before, that you don't really think you're going to connect with Hope of Ghirapur. Yeah, so then you board those out, and the Prince doesn't really do anything. Like I said, it was like kind of a way to use Vile. So then you just bring in like all your anti-combo stuff, and you bring in the Painful Truths because like it at least does something. Okay, so I guess I drew a hand that didn't really have any interaction, and then I think I keep this one, thinking like, okay, well I've got Brainstorm and I have Relic Warder, like, okay, what? At some point, like, what interaction am I hoping for? I guess like the best case would be either Damping Sphere or Deafening Silence, but I'm not gonna like aggressive mull into those. So I guess I think I keep this one. Yeah. I wish you could slow down mulliganing, but I put back a land because I only have things that cost 2, and you don't really need 3 lands against Tess. It's okay if you don't get it ever, actually. Okay, so I didn't play Giver on turn 1, even though that would have been protection for any Hate Bear on turn 2, because Relic Warder isn't something I anticipate slamming on turn 2. Because they wouldn't play any artifacts usually on turn 1. And I also think I'm going to actually end up putting Giver back because I just don't have the cards to not do that. Okay, so I do. And then now I drew the Enlightened Tutor, so now it's like really tough for Brian. I played on my upkeep and I get the Deafening Silence, and the rest of the game is pretty textbook. Wait. Okay, let me fix that. Yes, I see how that's a problem. Thank you. Okay, there. I think that should handle it. How does this work? Okay, it could still get in the way if they have a big board. So actually, let's do this differently. Hold on, how do I stop this? Okay, there we go. Okay, let's put this here, because usually cards don't end up here. Because lands are usually, like, a lot, but... Okay, so pretty much nothing happened. Like, I played Deafening Silence, so Bryant loses. But, like, it's not just, like, it's not that simple. Like, they can find bounce, and so you want to, like, follow up with hate. But then I did. I found a way to stop him from tutoring for the hate, so then that's really tough to deal with. I'm not actually sure why Bryant doesn't play Massacre anywhere in his list. I would have thought that would be a good Burning Wish target, but I don't know Storm anywhere near as well as he does, so there must be some reason. So at this point, I do this, even though, like, Giver's quote-unquote useless, pretty much, because this sets up exact lethal. And so Bryant recognizes that, and so he goes, like, okay, well, my life doesn't matter now, because I'm dead, so let's just, like, try whatever. So he goes, and then he brainstorms and gets nothing, so... Although I think at that point there's actually nothing, because he already played his one spell per turn. Okay, so let's go to game 3. If you have any questions about these matches, either sideboarding plans or strategies, please do say them in chat. I promise I'll try to check as often as I should. Okay. Oh, okay, so this time we didn't speed through Mulligan. I actually Mulligan, I guess, both games 1 and 2, but I didn't remember it. But this is like an absolute god hand, actually. Like, completely making up for any poor hand, like Mulligan or whatever. This is, like, way above the average. I have 2 active forces, and then also a permanent hate. This is unbeatable. And so, accordingly, like, things kind of spin out of control. Not quickly. So you see here, this is what I said, like, he actually drew a pretty good hand for his deck as well. But I was surprised that he had the hope. Maybe he only has the hope when he's on the play. So then that way, if he gets it on exactly turn 1, then I can't use any of my answers to stop it. Because I board out my swords. So maybe Bryant, like, next leveled that, and he's like, I'm on the play, so this game, hope is good. Because we didn't see it game 2, so maybe he did that. Okay, so then good thing I had 2 counters, because if I didn't counter Hope, Brian surely would have said, okay, I'll just wait till next turn. Because he knows I don't have answers to that. So I actually needed all my blue cards there to counter everything that happened, and then once I had that, then it's over. Like, 0 cards to... Or I guess, like, 3 cards to 3 cards, quote-unquote. But, it's like... These 3 cards are going to win, because Enlightened Tutor's really good. So I actually play Vile first, because I know that Brian's list doesn't run any discard. So then I can just do this instead. This is, like, a turn faster. Actually, it is... Yeah, 1 turn faster. Okay, so now I'm, like, drawing more hate, and then I've got the same lock again. Now they can only, like, natural draw 1 of their 3 bounces. So that's not that unlikely, but when you have only 1 card, like, you still need to also combo after you've bounced. So I have quite a bit of time, and so I decided to hold on to this Brainstorm until I get, like, something I don't want. And so here I think I decided to just play the Relic Order, yeah. Card advantage or whatever. And pick up the clock. But I'm, like, looking for a recruiter so that I can get the engine going. And now I drew something I didn't want, so I brainstorm. And then I got actually 2 recruiters, so then I used one of them to get a giver. Maybe that should have been a mom, actually. Oh no, I boarded out mom, so it had to be a giver. And then here I calculate that it's lethal in 2 turns anyway, so I might as well keep up the giver. And then, yeah, that happens. Okay, so I actually forgot what this person is playing, so let's find out. Oh, okay. It was Show and Tell, I think, wasn't it? Yeah, I think it was. So if I recall, I kept this hand without knowing anything. Like I didn't find out when this person was playing by MTG Goldfish or anything like that. I normally look that up, especially when a lot's on the line, but this person just didn't have any finishes, so I had no idea. And so I'm like, after I see the Preordain, I'm fairly certain it's either combo, or I guess it could be UR Delver, but it's more likely to be combo. Let's see if I was right. If I remember correctly, I think it's Show and Tell. Yeah, okay. So then, now I'm thinking like, fuck, I didn't draw my blue spell. Like, I could be in trouble, but then I drew a blue. Don't I end up losing this counter war? I think I do. Yeah. Okay, so then this isn't looking very good. So now my thought is like, okay, I need to draw a Relic Warder. So under normal circumstances, I would have put Charming Prince into play on my upkeep to scry 2. But the only way I possibly win this is if the top deck is exactly the one Relic Warder. There is just like no other way to win, or they don't have like anything to sneak attack, right? Like that's of course fine too. But if they don't have anything to sneak attack, I'm fine with the slightly slower non-upkeep Prince. So I really want to like get the Relic Warder if I can, and then I don't get it, so I die. That's pretty much that. So this sequencing is like a lot more relevant when it's Karakas, less so when it's against when it's Swords to Plowshares. But sometimes you want to respond to the draw 7 to get them to decide if they want another 7 before they've seen more information. Okay, so yeah, that sucked. Oh, right. Let's go over my sideboard plans here. So this is the Show and Tell entry. So Flicker Wisp doesn't really do anything. You can Flicker Omniscience, but they'll just get it back and then go off next turn. Peacekeeper is an ace card against this deck game 1, but like I discussed, if they so much as have even just a few answers that they're reasonably likely to draw it after they've drawn 14 or whatever, then Peacekeeper is no longer good because you're not going to actually win the ensuing fight over their removal spell. So since they will have answers to Peacekeeper in games 2 and 3, it goes from being like an uncounterable lockout card to it doesn't do anything. In fact, it stops you from killing them. So you board it out. Plague Engineer doesn't do anything. Prince doesn't do anything. Plague doesn't. Remorseful doesn't do anything. And the swords are also pretty bad, but at least if they have Artisan, you can remove it. So since I can't board them all out, then I board out 2 of them. So you bring in the Relic Warders for sneak attack and for Omniscience. You bring in the counters, of course. The draw just because it's generically good. The Tithe, actually, even though they're not a mana hate deck, because it's generically good and you don't have anything better to do. And the One Emrakul. So this is probably one of the lower blue count decks. Okay, so the Force is like stranded, but I also want to remark that after fetching the planes, I remember regretting it because, like, regretting it for a second because I thought, now if I draw Strix, I can't cast it. But actually, if I drew Strix, I would not cast it. So then fetching planes was like, it ended up being good, but I made like 2 mental mistakes that canceled each other out. So it's not like I was so next level that I was like, oh, if I draw Strix, I'm not playing it, so then I can fetch planes to play around Blood Moon or whatever. No, it was just, I fetched it thinking like, I want to play around Blood Moon, and then I didn't even think about Strix. So, yeah, there's a lot to think about with this deck, and I definitely don't think about it all the time. I think it turns out I don't draw Strix anyway. Okay, so the way I win this is actually pretty crazy. At this point, I thought, like, okay, I'm fucking done, because I didn't have the blue spell, and I don't have a way to remove this except one copy in my deck. And what's also far away, like one turn too many away, is the ability to play Recruiter and then play Palace Jailer. But as it turns out, this person doesn't have anything to put in and needs to find it. So now I have my counter up, and so now they can't find it anymore. So I countered this, of course, because it's like my only hope. And then they're like, well, I hope I draw something, and they didn't draw anything. So I heaved a sigh of relief because next turn it's all gonna go away. And if they had an answer to that, they would have just answered the Force of Negation instead. So sometimes people bring Blood Moon because they want to answer Karakas. So I'm not just like making things up when I say that I want to. Okay. When I like fetch basics. Well, you'll see, actually. Because I know what happens this match, and I really should have unmuted chat, like the in-game chat, when I was about to do this, because I probably would have gotten some high-quality responses. But I didn't. Okay, so I drew the Emrakul, and I'm like, oh, good, this game is going to be fun. So again, getting the basic land. So why'd I do that? That could have been, like, if my opponent was super heads up, he could have been like, wait, this is early. Like, I would have to be really lucky to have Sneak Attack online turn 3. Like, I would need to have 2 surprise mana that Jeff didn't know about, which means I have to make the land drop. And then probably it has to be even a soul land. And then after that, I have to win, like, I have to have my Sneak Attack resolve, and then I have to have, like, a Lotus Petal or something. Like, why is Jeff taking the low probability Sneak Attack instead of the high probability Show and Tell? So, to be fair, that's not just like, oh, because he has Emrakul. Like, that's not how I would expect my opponent to think, nor would it be correct thinking. But it could be something like, oh, because like if I show like Griselbrand, then he has Palace Jailer that I know about from last game, and yeah, I'll draw 14, but I'll lose my Griselbrand, and I probably wouldn't actually draw 14 because then he'd be threatening to kill me, and what if I don't get enough Lotus Petals or whatever? So maybe I draw 7, but then if I only draw 7 and he's the Monarch, like, am I even winning? So they might think like I have something I want to show, but they might not know that it's Emrakul. Anyway, somehow I guess this person didn't have show, and so the fact that they were willing to throw away a Pyroclasm just to kill Meddling Mage reveals that they probably have only Sneak Attack. Because if they had show and Sneak Attack, then they would just show the Sneak Attack. So they have only Sneak Attack, and so knowing that, of course, I will not prioritize using my mana efficiently. I will just replace that Meddling Mage. Okay, so I'm setting up in case, like, they remove it again, I guess. So what was perplexing to me as this game was going was, why didn't the person play out the Sneak Attack? It would be one thing if it was, like, they didn't know about this Meddling Mage, and it was, like, maybe he could have also, like, a Relic Warder, and I don't want to expose my Sneak Attack. Okay, that would be valid reasoning. But they know I have the Meddling Mage, and I've already shown I'm going to name Sneak Attack, so what do you think is going to happen next turn? And then I save the Baleful Strix for Force of Will. So I fetched the Thin because I have another fetch. I think I do play this file. It was a consideration to not do it because then it would be playing Hardcast Force around Daze. But I end up actually not hardcasting Force because it's clear as this turn evolves, it'll become clear that this is the last turn. So there's no reason to save my resources. So I say that resolves because I want to win, so why not? And then I guess they have like one thing in hand, and so then they're trying to get like the second thing, and then I counter that without exposing myself to Daze. So that one thing's only Emrakul, so I sack these 6 permanents, or these 6 permanents, or whatever, and then he resigns. Okay. So yeah, that happened. Be right back. Okay, so, this is actually kind of a weird compromising situation in streaming, that when you're looking at the screen to like look at what you're explaining or look at what you're playing, you're not looking at the webcam. I think that can't be fixed. Okay, so I had the mulligan again, and okay, I actually don't remember what happened, so let's reload this. I wish there were a way to do this in slow motion. Okay, oh, it was just a no-land hand. Okay, so it doesn't matter what I'm playing against, I never keep that. I mean, I've kept no-land hands against Reanimator, and I'm 4-0 in those matches where I did keep, or in those games where I did keep no-land hands, but it's pretty special to keep that. And so at this point, I've played against Walker Rock a lot. He's another trophy leader. He's usually playing, or they are usually playing some kind of Delver variation. And so I know I need all 3 of these lands, I need the Vial, and Peacekeeper is like probably too early to the party, so I get rid of that. Okay, so I'm trying to play around Stifle, but I'm not trying to play around Wasteland, because I can't. I already have the Tundra, so I can't. Okay, so at this point, I make a mistake. I think we can legit call this a mistake, and it starts with playing Flooded Strand and fetching with it. But of course, that play is closely tied to the intent, which is that I would play Baleful Strix. So my opponent passed turn 1. And I wouldn't even be happy if my opponent dazed Baleful Strix, let alone what actually happens to it. Okay, so that was terrible. Why would I play the more valuable thing first when it's like doubly extra exposed on this exact turn, but not in the future? In the future, I would be playing around Daze, my opponent may not have blue up. Why did I do that? Because I forgot about Spell Snare, and because I wasn't really thinking. These moments happened to me, and I'm not really sure why, but that happened, and I had to accept my mistake, and I went on to actually win in a way that was only possible because this was Remorseful Cleric and not Baleful Strix. But probably, although the game would have been different, I would have been more likely to win if I had played this thing correctly. Okay, so my opponent didn't daze last turn, but it doesn't necessarily mean anything, but I just decided, like, I don't have resources. I don't have cards, so, like, why don't I just play around Daze? I have nothing better to do. Sure. So I think I'm, like, thoroughly fucked at this point. Because I have like these trash cards that aren't meant for this matchup, or like are getting 1-for-1, while my opponent has a leader draw. And then I think this doesn't even resolve. Yeah, so so I actually don't know why my opponent soft countered or soft cast there. They could have hard cast because it's not like I could daze back with no cards in hand. Okay, so now I'm off black. Like everything just looks terrible, and my opponent probably regret not hard casting right then, because it cost them a land drop that probably cost them a play or something. And then now I'm drawing stuff that I don't have enough mana for, so... But my opponent's not really doing anything. I just imagine they have like a removal spell, but they're too stingy to use it on the Remorseful Cleric. And then once this happens, the Young Pyro, I think like, okay, I'm gonna lose the brace, especially if I don't get mana, but even if I do, it's probably getting dazed. And then the second Young Pyro, which... okay, so I do the one thing that I can here, right? And so there's maybe a debate here that sometimes... I'm going to admit that this was a little bit knee-jerk. Like, I think it was the right play, but I did it before... if I recall, I did it before, like, confirming that actually it was 100% the best play. It was just like, okay, I'm not going to win, like, I'll play Plague Engineer, maybe they don't have anything, and then I do actually win. Wouldn't that be nice? And it was just one of those things, like winning the lottery or something. Like, I think playing the lottery is silly, but somehow the excitement of playing lottery gets people to play it. And so I think here it was the same thing. Like, the allure that this might resolve psychologically influenced me to, like, bypass my normal checks to make sure it was actually the right play. Because while it looks like a potentially profitable play that could get me back in the game, and that's like in contrast to the other two possible plays which probably would not get me back into the game, oftentimes there's also a heuristic that if you're going to test the waters against counter magic with something, you may want to try doing it with the slower spell first, like the Recruiter. If they're going to counter that, then I'm going to lose a lot of tempo and probably be close to dying. But then I could, like, maybe bring it back next turn by having a play that pays off immediately. Whereas if they counter Plague Engineer, then I don't have any fast plays anymore. Like, everything else is only a setup play, but there's nothing to set up for after Plague Engineer dies, or is countered. So, while I still think that Plague Engineer was correct, I think that I didn't arrive at that conclusion using a valid thought process. Okay, and then this happens, so, like, I have no idea how I'm winning at this point. But don't worry, I do. Partly because they just refused to trade Young Pyro for Remorseful Cleric. I think that was probably a mistake. But Wakarok is a very good Delver player, so, like, you know, he has, like, more trophies than I do, like some 17 or whatever. So I'm sure if he's not attacking with that, there's a good reason. Okay, so at this point, it's like, okay, maybe I'm finally going to get something to work here. And then I finally get a 2 toughness creature. The all-important... Like I said earlier, there's a lot of 1 damage and 3 damage. Here's 1 damage, so... Now I'm starting to think, like, okay, it's starting to become relevant again about to kill my opponent. Maybe if he doesn't have anything, then maybe I can win. So now they realize, like, okay, I do need to, like, actually do damage. I need to be attacking, even if I could trade. Okay, so now it looks like I'm actually, like, back in the game, but this actually gets really down to the wire, where 1 health matters, if I recall. Yeah, so they attacked, and because of the setup that I did, I threatened exact lethal by... I let the game fly over this, but I made a significant choice last turn when I attacked with the Charming Prince. What was it? What was I worried about? No, I think okay, just the general way in which I sequenced the creatures. There was one turn where I calculated exactly, like, about 2 turns in advance. I was like, okay, I'm going to have exact lethal if I do, like, Flicker Wisp on the exact turn that I did it. And then that's what happened. So they could not hold back young Pyromancer to block the Charming Prince because this is still 5 damage. And then they couldn't kill me because I calculated ahead of time, like, if this play goes the way it's supposed to, I'm going to be at exactly 1. Obviously, I get blown out by Lightning Bolt, but, like, that's... No play is going to win against Lightning Bolt, so... So then they said, I'll attack you for 2, and I'm like, okay, I know you don't run green pump spells, so I'll just take it. And then, I guess, like, I was dying to Forked Bolt, but, yeah, that was definitely worth the risk. And then, when I didn't block, they resigned. I need some water. So please let me know if any of these plays seem like something you'd like to understand in greater detail. Okay, so yeah, let's go over the sideboard plan. It's not much. Most of the cards are pretty good against fair decks, but the Peacekeeper comes out. Where is it? Right here. And the Relic Order comes out. They both don't really do anything. And the Swords and the Tithe go in. Like I discussed, Tithe is anti-Wasteland, so it's highly relevant here. So this is a pretty good hand. The only thing that it doesn't have is Mile, but that's something you can overlook when you get these cards, which are, like, super important here. Now, normally, I advocate for playing Swords, like I used to in, like, the Ren and 6 meta. Just play it, and if they daze it, then they have to start this turn with 1 land. And if they don't, at least you don't give them a chance to Spell Pierce it. But people have started to really play, like, 3 or 4 copies of Arcanist. And so I end up thinking that even though Daze was revealed here, so I had a chance to, like, Swords right then as well, I end up thinking, like, no, I'm too afraid of Arcanist, and I'm less afraid of this, but actually it turns out I'm going to die to all of this. They're going to have, like, every response, and I won't be able to resolve anything in time. So at this point, I'm thinking, like, okay, now that I've seen the second Delver, I've changed my mind. Now I actually care about my life total. More than, like, Arcanist. But I don't fight over that because I know I'm going to be playing Strix, so I want to fight over that more so, because it comes as both an answer and an extra card. So now I choose to stand up for myself. And then I still lose anyway, so I would have lost any counter war. But at this point, I'm thinking, like, I try to keep my mind off of what could have been when I play in especially high-stakes matches. But I don't have total control over my mind sometimes. So, like, if it's curious about something, then sometimes the best way for me to feel right with myself to continue playing is to resolve the thought in my head. So oftentimes I try to do that in between matches, and here I told myself, like, no, you're going to think about, like, what is on the table right now, and in the 3-minute period between this game and the next one, if there is a next game, you're going to then think about, like, what you did, and you're going to write notes about, like, if it was optimal and stuff like that. But here I ended up thinking in, like, my post-game analysis, like, oh, maybe I should have played Swords, or at least if I did play Swords, then I wouldn't have gotten dazed, and then it would be like a very different game, you know, like, then I play Baleful Strix, and I guess that gets dazed or pyroblasted or something, like, probably I never resolve a Baleful Strix, and then this Delver is active, but I would have saved some life, like, I think I played correctly. And ended up getting blown out by a hand that was less likely than the hand that I played around. So, first Arcanist is more likely than second Delver plus this. So I think I did the right thing. But it was still hard to shake as a matter of human psychology, like, oh, did I lose that game for no good reason? Because I certainly started with everything. Like, I didn't think I could lose after getting a hand like that, but I did. And that certainly didn't help. So now I'm like, oh, okay, actually, I am really gonna lose. Yeah, it's over. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so no recruiter guard, because I already have, like, I just need lands, that's pretty much it. Okay, so that was pretty much like, give me swords or else I probably lose, and then I lost. Oh, so a significant decision, I actually learned something from this mistake. So you noticed how I put back Tundra. It like played by pretty quickly, so maybe you didn't notice, but I put back Tundra, and when given a choice to put back one land, I put back something else too, and then I put back one land. I thought, I'm going to keep, of course, the fetch, right? That's obvious. But I'm going to keep Scrubland and put back Tundra, and my plan is to then fetch Tundra. I regret that, because, as I learned in this match, Scrubland is the only black that Tithe can get, and especially when you have two Tithes, that's pretty relevant. Instead, I could have brainstormed, and then put back Scrubland and kept Tundra, and then promised to get a black source with Marsh Flats. So how's that different? Well, the black source I get could be Underground Sea instead, so then it doesn't starve my Tithe from producing black mana. So that actually, like, I made an annotation in my notes about that, but I didn't know that at this point in time, and I ended up paying for it. So for some reason, my opponent ends up not wasting me here. I don't know in what world you have this going, and it's still not good enough to where it's like, no, I just want to lock my opponent down. I want to keep everything up. But I'm sure he has his reasons. But because he didn't, I got to make one last stand here, and that one last stand was met with a counter. Okay, so now I'm off black, and that's where, like, this becomes relevant. You notice how I put back Baleful Strix because I recognized my mistake. I realized, like, oh, I'm going to Tithe, but I can't actually get black with it, so I guess, like, that sucks. So I'm planning to do 3+1, 2 turns in a row to try to catch up with this. But then he shows that, and yeah. So I don't know why the Young Pyro didn't attack here. I'm sure that's a mistake. Oh, no. Actually, no. I think he decided to go face with that. So I wasn't sure, but I thought it was a like, not spending 1 damage to kill my recruiter is not, like, a proven mistake, but it seemed very weird. Especially because anytime I wanted to... No, actually, no, that is a mistake, for sure, and it's provably a mistake. Because, Walker Rock had 2 alternative plays here. They could bolt my recruiter, which would enable a Young Pyro attack. So that's plus 2 damage, minus 3 damage, so it's minus 1 damage. But if I so chose, I could have sacrificed my recruiter to block an elemental, and then that also is minus 1 damage. Furthermore, that would kill the elemental so that it doesn't do damage next turn. So, by doing this, Walker Rock gave me a choice. So originally, if he made what I consider the correct play here, then I don't have a choice. I only take all the damage. But by playing as they did, they gave me a choice. Would you rather gain 1 life relative to the other line, or would you rather keep your recruiter? And so, if one of the choices involves, like, the other line, and then the other choice is something else, you should never give your opponent that choice, because that means that they'll just optimize. Like, either they can have what you could have forced them to take, or you're going to give them option B. Well, what if option B is better than... like, game theoretically, when your opponent chooses, they choose, like, maximum between all the options. And so, if they're maximizing and you give them a subset of the options, then the feasible region of their optimization calculation is lower, so they can't pick as good of an option. But here, Walker Rock gave me a choice, and so because it's a choice, then it's not only, like, probably wrong, it's just for sure wrong. So in general, I defer to, like, people who actually know what they're doing with their deck, but in that case, it was just like a mathematical thing. Like, that's just wrong. But he won, and he played everything else very well, so this was definitely, like, a close match, and I lost. Okay, so this time I don't know what my opponent's playing, and as I recall, they didn't have any record, so I just was blind. So I kept, like, a generically good hand, and yeah, we'll see how this goes. Oh, right, was it show and tell? I think it was show and tell. At least at this point, I'm guessing it, even though this could have been naturally drawn Volcanic Island from, like, Tess or Ant or something. But no, it's probably show and tell, so I name it. And then because it's show and tell, I also know, like, okay, I don't actually need protection from anything. I'm just going to value damage. So, at this point, I actually knew that that Orange 67 had been popularizing some lists that had both show and tell and stoppy elements. So I'm going to just admit that it was wrong to fetch Tundra instead of Island. There's just no reason to. Even if I wanted to cast Leonin Relic Warder, that I would have to draw, first of all. I have another fetch land to do it with. And I already had my black. Island, Plains, Scrubland casts everything in the entire deck except for, what's it called? Brazen Barrer. So this was really stupid, and it was lucky that I win anyway. I was not punished for this mistake, but it was bad. So now I'm just, like, you know, I'm regretting pretty badly that I don't get to cast either of these 2 spells, and then I get a lucky break that I draw Plains. So I don't know, like, if it was required, but there's only one person who didn't play this game perfectly, and that one person so far is me. So to be, like, in the driver's seat was lucky. Okay. I don't know what they had that this was, like, time to resign. But they did. Because it wasn't lethal next turn. So, actually, unfortunately, I'm not sure how I can recover what I did in the sideboard here. Let me make sure I'm still recording. Okay, good. I'm not sure how to recover that because this list was not something that I had made an entry for in my sideboard list. But I think my thought process was like, okay, I'm going to start with this. And then I thought about, like, how does this change given what I know about the list? I guess to answer that, maybe it would be easiest if I brought up my list. So I ended up thinking, like, okay, they have, like, all of these moon effects, so they probably don't have counter magic because none of the moons are blue. And moreover, it's harder to cast blue spells when you have all those moons. So there's probably not much counter magic, if any. And there's probably not as much removal for room for removal, even though removal would be red, and red would be easier to cast, just because there's so many other elements to this kind of deck. So I thought, as is not the case with regular show and tell, it's probably right in this particular case to bring out some of my giver effects. And I also thought swords is probably relatively more valuable because there's still the same threat of arcane, of what's it called, that arcane creature I forgot, the one that cheats through Containment Priest, Arcane Artisan. There's still the chance of that, but there's also Magus of the Moon. At least in Aurum 67's build, there was. And so there's a chance that might happen. And in general, there just wasn't anything else. Like, I wanted to bring in the same 7 cards I do against regular show and tell, but I wanted to cut the givers, so what else could I do? I could keep the swords. And so that's pretty much what I did, now I remember. So at this point, like, whenever I make a mistake, like I did in the last game, I try to take a break during that 3-minute period to, like, calm myself, like, okay, that was bad, but let's try to go on and not do any more of that. So here I calculated I was on the draw, I have a lot of 2-mana cantrips, so, like, if I do get that land in 2, then I'm good. And moreover, I had the Force of Will, there was Brainstorm I could have top decked, Ponder I could have top decked, Vial I could have top decked too, Tithe I could have top decked, and I had 2 copies of Tithe, and so it was just like, it was a good bet, and it didn't work out. So, you know, I'm sure it looks silly here, like, having had to clean up and probably losing because of that, but I think it was not ideal, but better than the average 6-card hand. Okay, so this happens, and I'm just like, okay, I think I declare that I've had enough pretty soon. Yeah, I think once that happens, or... Okay, well, yeah. So, that was that. Let's go back to look at the third game. That was round 4. I remember having to heave a sigh of relief after this match because this match got on my nerves a little bit. Not because of my opponent or anything, just because it was so close. So now I know, like, all about the Blood Moons. I know, like, kind of a bigger picture about what's going on. And I decide to fetch basics because I like playing cards. So that actually told me they probably didn't have show, like, right away. The fact that they didn't attempt it right then. And then now I'm, like, looking to the long term, like, hoping I can get the Soul Herder engine online. And I think they get stuck on 2 lands for a while. So yeah, I don't even bother, like, trying to ponder in between or anything, because, like, it doesn't really matter. All that matters is that I get this online, get the clock going, get the extra cards going, and that my opponent dies as quickly as possible when they're relying on Ancient Tomb for mana. So at this point, I'm playing towards getting shown, right? So like, if I'm going to name a card, it's going to be Sneak Attack, and so on and so forth. And I'm preparing to do actually exactly that. So they don't have a second red source, and so I end up... how did I sequence this? I don't remember. Okay, so I first do this, and then I play Meddling Mage. And I remember thinking that that was significant, so let me think about why. So imagine that something happened to my Leonin Relic Order, like it got forced or something. Then I would actually mage something else, right? I wouldn't mage Sneak Attack, because it doesn't matter if they can't play more Sneak Attacks, they already have one. What does matter is if they then drew, like, some cantrip, and then I could have Meddling Mage that, and then they don't draw something that they can put into play. So yeah, this was correct sequencing. Whereas the other way, I played Meddling Mage, they're like, whatever, I don't care, I already have Sneak Attack. And then they forced Relic Order, and I already named Sneak Attack. It's like, well, that sucked. So I sequenced specifically in that way here. But then since it resolved, then I named Sneak Attack. Okay, so they played that so they don't have to take any more damage, I guess. But it's already too late. So here, instead of naming Show and Tell, because I don't have to, I know that Show and Tell is already pre-countered by the Emrakul, I was free to name Pyroclasm, and so even though Emrakul didn't, like, literally come into play this game, it came into play in, like, the more, I guess, metaphorical sense, in that it affected this match by letting me play Meddling Mage naming Pyroclasm. Maybe they had one, so maybe it didn't matter because maybe they didn't have it, but yeah, that was a close call. My opponent didn't draw well in game 3, so that helped. I think this was another player where, although I did find information about them, let's see, do I remember what they were playing? I don't remember now. Was it Control? It was Stoneblade or something, right? I don't remember. I think it was Stoneblade. Yeah, it was like 4-color Stoneblade or something. Ah, yeah, it was. Oko Stoneblade. So these kind of control versus control matchups are really good for me. Except maybe for Grixis Control, that can be somewhat difficult, maybe 50-50. Okay, so let me explain that choice of tutor target, because oftentimes what you tutor for is both non-obvious and highly consequential in control versus control mirrors. So I'm calling it a mirror because this deck plays also as a control deck in that case. I only really play the role of aggro when I'm playing against certain combo decks. Not even all of them. So a general heuristic is that you want to get Palace Jailer when either one of the following two conditions are true. Either you're worried that they might have removal spells. That's the one that applies here. Because there's no reason for me to think they don't have it, and I don't have any protection against it anymore. So they could main phase 2 remove my Soul Herder if I got that instead. Like, it was clear I was getting an engine, but which engine? And so that's where these heuristics come in. If you can't tolerate a removal spell, then that's like more points for Palace Jailer. If you don't have the mana to support like playing a bunch of stuff that you get off of Soul Herder, but you need like the tempo swing because you're like maybe not that ahead on board or maybe even a little behind. You need the tempo swing of like exiling a creature as an incidental part of like you getting your engine online. Then you want to get Palace Jailer. And then if you have a lot of resources, but you're like worried about... So those are like the two conditions, and then otherwise you get Soul Herder. So sort of the complementary case is like, you've got the resources to spare, and maybe you're not so worried about removal, but you're like potentially going to lose Monarch to Ice Fang Coatl, or then you get Soul Herder. So there's kind of one exception here. Let's say they take one of your cards with Oko, and you're thinking about which thing to get. You might want to get Palace Jailer because you could exile one of your own cards, and then that's like better than exiling a card they control that they also own. So that's something to consider. So I thought that play there was a mistake. It made possible the Palace Jailer play that I did. If they didn't do that, I would have not played Palace Jailer, but actually they didn't know that. They should have even thought that maybe Jeff will play Palace Jailer if I don't do that, because Jeff doesn't have anything better to do. Then I would just die to that Ice Fang Coatl. But actually it turns out, at least if they held that back, I would have just played Recruiter, so I wouldn't have died, but then I also wouldn't have gotten this Draw Engine online. So they let me get a Draw Engine online because they decided it was more important to snipe my Recruiter. I'll give them some credit for that. It is important to kill Recruiter, and a lot of players are too reluctant to spend one card to kill the Recruiter, because they think, like, that's like -1. But, you know, that's how the deck is. Like, that's, you know, you can kill Recruiter and it's not going to break my back. But if you don't kill Recruiter, then I'll use it to break your back. So it's kind of just like a loss players have to learn to accept. But in this case, I don't think that they should have accepted that loss in this particular way. But they did. So then I was like, oh, okay, now I'm going to play Palace Jailer because you allowed that play. And then I become the Monarch. And then next turn, Ice Fang Coatl isn't scary anymore because I could play Peacekeeper if I had to. I think I actually do? I don't remember. I first of all start with, of course, Baleful Strix. And then them having to do that, like, taking out a 2/2 with a premium removal spell was also, like, wow, this is really bad. It's a bad day for them. Oh yeah, because they tapped out also, then I don't have to worry about anything, so I just played the board. And then they have swords, that sucked. Yeah, okay. But I'm still the Monarch, so like Jace is barely keeping up. Oh, okay. Sequencing issue. You do it the way I did it because you want to draw before you tutor. Because you want to tutor with more information. And you want the draw to come out of the denser library. So at this point, this game's just like out of control. I have the Swords to Plowshare, so they can't even protect Jace anymore. So now it's just I'm the Monarch, and they are not drawing extra cards. So I attacked both the Jace, of course. And then now I'm like, okay, well, I don't want to play too much to the board because of Terminus or whatever. Like, I don't know what they have. They probably don't have Terminus, and I will assume that in other closer situations. But here, I can play around whatever I want because I'm just so far ahead. So, yeah, I'll play around Terminus. So here I block first just in case something weird happens, and they try to make something happen, but then I brainstorm into a counter, and that causes them to resign. Please let me know if there are any questions. I have to hear it back. I guess, given how exhausted I was as this event progressed, I shouldn't. My earlier comment was perhaps unwarranted when I said that I would trust that Walker play was like correct sort of no matter what because he like knows what he's doing, but I know what I'm doing with my deck, and I made a ton of mistakes, so obviously that can happen to him too. So it's no surprise that in rounds 3, 4, 5 already people are starting to slip, and then certainly later on there would be a lot of slips. Okay, so that was what, game 1 of round 5? Okay, so this is a great hand. Like, almost... Like, certainly I'm not mulliganing it, and then it's also very good. It only doesn't work if they have, like, both Erupt Decay and Oko. And so it's a good bet. And then they don't have exactly both of those. And even if they did, I would have to still not draw a land. So it's just, like, so much would have to go wrong for me to lose with this hand. Because if none of those things go wrong, and I actually get my stuff online, then it's just going to come out so fast that there's no way anything's happening. So they got Batterskull. So I think I made it a top priority to Meddling Mage Abrupt Decay. In fact, I probably do it then? No, I didn't. Huh, interesting. Oh, right, because I wanted to eat the germ. Yeah. So they saw that, and to their credit, they played well. They got rid of the mother before I could get the Strix into play, and so I had to do the trade instead of the freebie. So I want to stop the Batterskull loop, so I get rid of the SFM. So one of the reasons Oko is not scary against this deck is because you can tell when Oko would be scary, and then you can do something about it, and that something can be delaying it with Meddling Mage. And then all the times that Oko's not scary, you can do nothing about it and just simply kill it through combat damage. And Soul Herder is very good at that. It both gives you a card back, and then also if they allocate, it gets big. I forget if that comes up at all in this match, but just in general, people often ask me, like, how do you beat, like, why isn't Oko a problem for you? And that's the reason. Oh, okay, so just so that I say something about it, why didn't I attack there? Because they could have, I think I was thinking about the Coatl, but they couldn't actually have had Death Touch, so why didn't I attack? Was that a mistake? I missed that. I think I didn't attack with Meddling Mage because so it named Force of Will, and I hadn't drawn to get the Soul Herder through, and then because I wanted to play Soul Herder a turn earlier than I would have been able to Vial it because they didn't have removal up the previous turn. I think it was like Tropical Island only or something. And then I didn't want to trade Meddling Mage in. So that much is clear. Oh, and then Soul Herder was only a 2/2, so same thing. So I wanted to not play into Snapcaster Mage, that's why. Okay, so they try to intercept my my Soul Herder, but I at least get to use my Vials, and then I get way ahead on the board. And yeah, it resolves, but by showing me that, it told me I need to get Palace Jailer, and so I did. Okay, so then this turn I just get rid of the Containment Priest, and in the same turn get rid of the True Name Nemesis. So after that, it's done. Because I know they can't force, so I'm not even thinking about that anymore. So I just decided to keep my Vials at 3 and 2. I could have, if I didn't have Meddling Mage naming Force of Will, then I could have made them 4 and 3 and done exactly what I'm about to do as well. But then I would lose a Vial. So I'm taking advantage of the Mage stopping any possible interaction here because Force and Negation is not relevant against Palace Jailer. So it's only because I have this Mage that I didn't increment these Vials. Okay, so why do I do this right now? I remember having a reason for that. I guess maybe not that important. I think I just swing out now, right? No, I only swing with the things that I don't care to lose. Wait. Wait. Did I think that the Quaddle would have Death Touch? Why didn't these swing? So it's clear why, like, anything that's 2 toughness that I care about didn't swing. This didn't swing because I didn't want to have the monarchy taken away. And then, why didn't this swing? I'm not sure. I think I might have been just playing too quickly because time or something. Oh yeah, I do remember thinking like, oh yeah, duh, I could have swung. So, yeah, that was dumb. And then I didn't swing, so that was, you know, a mistake. So you can see, like, these stack tricks, you start, if you have to think about everything and then figure it out in real time, it's going to be very difficult. So you need to, like, memorize some of these patterns. Like, what order should I put things on the stack? And here, because I was playing quickly, I do explicitly remember having this memory. I thought, ah, shit, it's so dumb that I targeted the Palace Jailer ahead of time. Because the Jailer could get rid of one Ice Fang Quaddle, and it only jails it, it doesn't kill it. But the Plague Engineer would first of all kill the one that I could see. And then, moreover, it would kill the other one too. So, I obviously don't need to have Plague Engineer naming Rogue. Unless they have, I guess, Brazen Barrer. But this was dumb. I should have targeted Plague Engineer, and because I didn't, there was like this kind of nail-biter situation where they could have like a couple of removal spells and then like some sort of counter magic for bounce, and then I get in trouble. Where they get back like so many prisoners. What do they have exiled? One... Oh, I guess it's only... It would be like Containment Priest plus Ice Fang Quaddle. So, actually, I'm not really sure when Ice Fang Quaddle and Containment Priest come back at the same time, if Ice Fang Quaddle comes back at all. Someone care to clarify that? Ah, okay. So it won't affect them. Cool. I believe this was a Delver matchup against Francis Cowper. Yep. If I recall, I end up just like drawing well in these matches. Like this is a good hand. By the way, does anyone have any music suggestions? What would be, like, not overpowering? I mean, I'm a big Smashing Pumpkins fan, but I have a feeling that kind of grunge rock would, like, overpower my explanations. At least some viewers have complained about that in the past. I like EDM, but same thing there. I like classical music. So here I have so many 2-drops, I'm like, I'm never getting them all out. I will let Francis daze me if I have to. Whoops. What am I doing? This is... There we go. Same rationale with the 2-drops. To be fair, this is also a good hand from Francis. Like, he's coming out very quickly, and if I didn't draw as good of a hand as I did, I probably would have lost. See, so I stopped here on the second main to be able to get the extra card. I know they can't stifle, or he can't stifle because he didn't leave mana up, so it's safe. Otherwise, that is something you normally need to think about. Getting the return of the 2 trigger wording flickers. I mean, they're always 2 trigger worded. Like, that might be prevented. And then now I didn't get Plague Engineer? Oh, right, because I thought, like, I need more resources. Next turn, I'm getting Plague Engineer. I'm getting it now, but they can't interact with it. And then next turn, I'm going to play it. Obviously, I don't die this turn. So then Francis sees that, and he's like, oh yeah, I'm going to lose, like, both my Young Pyros. And then after that, I'm going to lose all my Elementals in my end step. So, like, okay, it's a good game, too. So then, I guess I forgot to talk about sideboarding against control decks in general. It usually involves cutting some combination of, like... So this was for the last round, I forgot to get into that. You cut, like, the useless tutor targets, and then you bring in some, like, value cards. So against Francis, you are Delver again. We already went over that one. So this is a terrible hand. So I guess I misremembered. I thought I drew, like, great hands all 3 games. But it is, like, a mana denial deck that I'm against, and I did draw 4 lands. The Soul Herder's kind of just hanging. The Meddling Mage and Force aren't really doing much. Especially Game 2, like, if you don't have other protections, they have many different names of removal spells, especially for blue permanents. So, like, this is kind of just, like, gonna get traded out, and, but it's better than 6. Like, a lot of things are better than 6. So, so I keep. So, this is a thing that I kind of do sometimes, where, I have 4 lands, and I'm okay with them wasting me. Maybe I even want it. With 4 lands, I don't really want it, but I'm, like, okay with it. But then you don't want to fetch basics, because you might be not okay with it if they waste your dual land if you also have basics, because then you might not represent enough colors. But if you get 4 duels or something like that, or like 3 duels, then they can't really waste you off anything. So they can just waste you off, like, 1. But not, like, a color. So that Daze play was also pretty weak, so that's why I'm, like, kind of in this, even though my hand started out not so good. Drew kind of, like, more relevant things after that. And this turn, I did, like, a little bet hedge. I was like, I don't want to get dazed for a 3-mana spell, but if you want to daze me, you can daze my Giver of Runes. That's sort of why I went ahead with this play, instead of the more, like, I guess what is the faster play, even though that might seem kind of oxymoronic. It's faster to play Recruiter, because I'm not going to be racing this game. Like, they already have Delver, and I had a slow hand. I don't think I'm racing. At least at this point, it doesn't look like it. So, so by faster, I mean I'm getting cards that would answer the Delver, instead of, like, waiting around, doing things that, like, set up to have a better chance to answer the Delver. But I wanted to play around Daze. So this is that situation I mentioned earlier, where it's like, I don't want to... I can't take too much more damage, but I don't want to break my chain. So what am I going to do? I get Flicker Wisp. And then, good thing I didn't break the chain, because now I get Plague Engineer. I know that they couldn't break my chain for me with a removal spell, because I had Giver. And I also now am aware, like, okay, now it actually looks like racing might matter, so let's play out my creatures. Actually, this game I kept the Relic Order, because I had this, I I think I looked at Francis's list in his online, like the goldfish, or it might have been in the chat that we were in. But for some reason, I thought he was playing Sulfuric Vortex, and so I kept the Leonian Relic order. Okay, so then he wastes me off black. That sucked. I forget who wins this race. I think they do. Yeah, they do. Yeah, now I remember this. This was unfortunate. So I'm like waiting for that to not flip. It flips, and so I scoop, I think. Or do I die? Oh, I just die. Okay. Yeah, let's die. So it comes down to the wire, game 3. I think I might have boarded out Relic Order in between. I'm not sure. I may have thought, like, I think Francis is the aggro player here, but I don't think Francis is so much the aggro player that he's, like, bringing in Sulfuric Vortex. I'm not sure. You'd have to ask Francis. I didn't quite understand why he waited for me to untap there. That was weird, in my opinion. So I'm not attacking here, even though like these two are roughly equally valuable, which would normally justify attacking because then he could bolt this or he could bolt this, and it doesn't really matter because Pyroblast effects can only target this one or only work on this one, and so Giver would be very good at preventing those. So that's why I didn't attack there. I have 2 swords, so I just go for it. I think it resolves. Oh no, it doesn't. Okay. So it was good that I just went for it then, because I saved mana. So here Tithe is really good. But I made the Scrubland mistake again. So, see, like, I'm writing notes, telling myself to play correctly, and in either the heat of the moment or, like, fatigue or whatever, like, it happens. You forget even things that you explicitly told yourself to not forget. So I wanted to draw the vial, so I did, because otherwise I don't have black. But then I got 2 lands off of the Tithe, and those 2 lands were like delicious mana that I was starved otherwise. Oh, earlier I talked about a game that came down to like 1 damage, and I remembered it was Delver, but I think it's actually this match, so we should make sure to visit all the details once it gets closer, because I'm still at 15. It's not there yet. Did I shuffle? It doesn't show. I think I did not shuffle because I wanted... Right. I wanted the Giver of Runes because it uses my vial, and it was kind of clear at this point that I was fighting for time, not for resources, or not for cards. And because of that, I also traded there to like start saving life right away, instead of like, I take a couple of pings of 1 and then I trade later. No, I just do it right now because I recognize like that's happening. My opponent has enough board presence that they can force me to make this trade. So I'm just going to acknowledge that and save a couple life points by getting ahead of that acknowledgement, pretty much. So this was like, I just have to do that. Like, I hope it works. And then, it's also going to answer the Dreadhorde Arcanist for now, because otherwise there's all of this that's coming back, and I absolutely cannot be having that. So now, it comes down... There's several points at which I get to decide just how much risk I want to take to deal damage. And I will go over each one of these choices individually. Okay, so I'm now, like... If the Plague Engineer goes away, it's like, it's done. Okay, so here I drew Force of Will. So now, here's choice number one. Um, Attacking with Baleful Strix deals 1 damage, and my opponent's not going to do anything about it. Almost certainly. Attacking with Plague Engineer does 2 damage, but I give Francis the chance to say, I'm going to sacrifice my Bedlam Reveler to make you sweat. What if I have something next turn? Do you dare to, like, attack to deal 1 extra point of damage when you give me this choice? So I said earlier choices were bad if all else is equal, but all else is not equal here. I get to do 1 more damage if I give Francis a choice. And so I have to evaluate, like, is it more valuable to give Francis a choice, or is it more valuable to deal 1 more damage? So I decide, like, okay, I'm going to give Francis a choice, and he decides to block. Why did I decide that? Actually, there's, like, a little proof you could write kind of in reverse that doing this is actually almost strictly better. If I attack with Baleful Strix, Francis could make me make the choice next turn. So he could then attack with Bedlam Reveler, and then I either take 3 or I kill it for free, right? So then I'm presented with the same choice, except Francis's version of the same choice is if I choose to attack for 1, then Francis can pose me, will you take 3, or will you do the same exchange that you could have offered me last turn, and risk dying to a lightning bolt. Actually, that's what I thought at the time, but I'm now realizing that it's a little bit different because in their attack step, Dreadhorde Arcanists will have already either not attacked or attacked and not triggered anything. So it is slightly different, but it's still pretty clear that if Plague Engineer goes away, then I'm going to lose. So the details are still the same. So the decision tree is as follows. If I attack with Plague Engineer, then Francis gets a chance to sacrifice Bedlam Reveler to make me have to counter everything for the next turn. And if I attack with Baleful Strix, then Francis can make me do the same thing, because I obviously cannot also afford to take 3 damage just unchecked like this. I'm going to lose that race, and trying to, like, draw out of this when my opponent has 2 cards also, it's like a pretty risky proposition. So I can't take 3. So I know that if presented with the choice of taking 3 or tapping Mother of Runes and killing the Bedlam Reveler for free, or at least attempting to do so, I will at least attempt to do so. So then if I know already ahead of time, which I did, I sort of figured out, I know that presented the choice Francis could force me to make, I would then tap my Mother of Runes. What's the probability Francis would make me make that choice? Probably about the same as the probability that Francis would make me make that choice if I attacked with Plague Engineer. So I know that if Francis is prepared to sacrifice the Reveler, then I'm gonna end up I'm gonna end up, like, calling the bluff and tapping Mother of Runes. So then at least I'm gonna force him to take extra damage over it. That was my reasoning here, because I saw I can't avoid tapping my Mother anyway, so I'm just gonna speed up your clock. And that reasoning turned out to work, but it was a close call. So now, after the cast Young Pyro, I definitely heaved that sigh of relief, knowing that that card couldn't be like any 0 mana removal spell or something. So, whew. Okay, so now I have pretty much the same choice again. Francis could sacrifice the Young Pyro to make me make the same decision, and I also just drew a replacement for my Force of Will. Now, I can't attack with both of these, right? Because if I attack with both of these, then Francis just goes like, I'm at 16. I'll take it, and then I'll race you. Or at least that was the case with the Reveler. It's less so with Young Pyro, because Young Pyro still sacrifices itself to Mother of Runes. But I thought... I think that I could have attacked here with Baleful Strix, actually. I don't think I could have last turn, because then it's not enough teeth on, like, if you attack with... then attacking with Bedlam Reveler is, like, free. It's like, tap your Mother Runes, or else take 3, and I don't even lose my Bedlam Reveler. I think this turn, because I'm still threatening to eat the Young Pyro, there's still the same teeth on my threat that I could have attacked with Baleful Strix, and that would have been more optimal. So this was a mistake. But I'm not going to write anything about it because it's like so specific it'll probably never come up again. So now that my play on the turn with Bedlam Reveler paid off, like I'm now getting to attack for 2 and actually should have been 3 instead of only the 1 I would have been able to attack for otherwise. So at this point I play Meddling Mage, and I think I just named Lightning Bolt. Oh no, True Name Nemesis, because I realized like okay, if True Name Nemesis comes down, I'm dying. So, I decided to do that instead of Hold Up Force of Will. That's, like, also a consequential choice that could be very important, and I don't have a great justification for it, nor did I have the time to carry out, like, the intense calculation to make sure that that was optimal, and, I don't have the desire to do that calculation now, so I'm not going to do it. Okay, why did I attack with only Strix last turn? Because now there's this threat that, like, okay, my opponent can just, like, shit out a bunch of instants and, like, force me to either tap Mother Runes or, like, there could be a counterattack next turn. I think there was also some element of, like, this is getting a little too complicated for me. Like, I only have just over 5 minutes. Like, let me do the thing I know for sure will work. But I think at this point, it started getting to the point where I like couldn't keep up with the decision trees anymore, and so I just started like picking something. And if I had more of an intuition about how to do these sort of logic trees so that some of it would be automatic, then I could have probably made more discerning choices at this point. So that last attack, for instance, like I already know I missed 1 damage earlier with the Strix. On the first Young Pyro turn, I probably missed 2 more damage right then. And this isn't like forgetting to attack, you know, it's like not reasoning that I could safely attack, I guess. So now this happens, and now I'm like, oh, okay, I guess damage doesn't really matter as much anymore because like now I'm gonna stabilize, and it's not gonna be about the race anymore. Okay, so I guess actually this wasn't a race. It's hard to remember what happened when there's so many matches. I think I don't play the Vial to like get around days. Yeah. Oh, and then when I drew that, it's like, okay, now I have whatever I want. Now it's just an issue of like not doing something really fucking stupid and losing. So then that's why I'm like taking the obvious choice. Like, okay, I don't want to do anything stupid, then I'm just gonna like attack with the 1 creature that's safe. Even though I probably could have attacked for more, it's like pretty obvious that it's not going to be about that anymore. So like I get instant speed removal, I have double counter up, like this is over. And then my Winnin'. At this point, most of my opponents had just ended up doing rather poorly. I think Bryant Cook had a bad day. He O2 dropped. And even though I went 2-1 before I had my first loss in round 3, it like that would normally give you like at least above the 50th percentile tiebreakers. But with me, I was like consistently ranking in the bottom half of like whatever record bracket I was in. So that's what made this, when I was 5-1, I still had to win to get in. And then I think it was another Delver deck. So these matchups like make me sweat. Play around Stifle, but not Wasteland because I can't. I have both my basics already. Playing around Stifle is more important, I mean, I guess this is not even specific to my deck, so you probably already know this, but it's more important to play around Stifle when in the future you wouldn't play any fetch lands, because then the one time they're not ready, then you like kind of blank their card. At least tempo wise, like yeah, they could stifle like a file activation or recruiter or whatever, but it's not as bad as having a fetch land stifled. I'm thinking about running 4 swords just because 3 to 4 copies of this has become so common. So I want to point out there that I made a conscious choice. I did not activate Vial to put in Charming Prince to like make it more likely that I would find this land to be able to play the Palace Jailer. And I remember having a reason for that, and I think that the reason was that I wanted to be able to flicker the Palace Jailer if necessary. Like, if it got stifled or something. Was that it? I don't quite remember. Or maybe it was... Okay. I guess I chose to play around Daze, like... I have a not very great memory of this match. Oh yeah, because I thought like, okay, well, just one more turn of this Dreadhorde Arcanist, that's not going to be so bad. Once this gets up to 3, I can flicker it away, like I'm going to get more time, and then I can get up to 4 in Palace Jailer for sure, and then I don't think my opponent can deal with that. And so I thought like, fine, you can have one more free flashback spell. Please do let me know if you have any questions about any of these plays, or any choices or whatever. Yeah, so I blanked the Vault. These matches are so interesting to me. It's so much better to watch them than it is to play them. Because when you're playing it, it just feels like so stressful. But when you're watching it, there's like so many interesting decisions. So here, this was definitely an interesting decision. What should I take? I was between Dreadhorde Arcanist and a token because it was clear that the Monarchy was not going to stay with me for... If my opponent was willing to sacrifice like some large number of tokens for it, then I'm not going to be the Monarch. So if they just attacked right now, then the assignment would be I kill 3 tokens and I eat your Pyro. Or I don't eat it, I trade with it. So it would be like a large concession, I thought, to get back the Dreadhorde Arcanist, and even though they could guarantee it if they wanted because my hand was empty, I thought, okay, if they want to do that, I'm okay with that. Then they miss an Arcanist turn, and they lose 3 tokens. That's better than just me taking a token. And it's certainly better than me taking the Young Pyro. That's like the worst option, because then Young Pyro comes back, they get the flashback spell, everything sucks. The flashback spell like changes combat so they don't lose as many elementals. Like, no, that's the worst option. So I think I chose the best option here. And then I didn't draw the Swords to Plowshares. That would have made this like totally backbreaking, but oh well. That's like very unlikely. I think they have a Bolt or something, and then it made the situation substantially worse. Oh, Petty Theft. So then I had to tap... I actually think that Theo should have bounced my Giver. I think that was a mistake. So yeah, I take what's given. Oh, that's the line from Altered Carbon. So then I get the Monarch back. And I guess, although I can't kill... So actually, at this point, I'm like, wow, fuck, do I actually have to, like, force the Stifle? So that way, like... I was thinking, okay, I'm forcing the Stifle just to cycle the Force, but then I realized, no, actually, it's more than that. By forcing the Stifle, I'm making it so that my opponent has to make a pretty not profitable attack just to deal 1 point of damage to me again. So, but it doesn't resolve anyway. It gets dazed. So now I'm like really sweating it because they have a ton of tokens. They have this, and I'm only at 13. I can use my life total, but I can only use it once pretty much, and I choose to use it right now. They probably should have attacked with Young Pyromancer here, because like I'm gonna gang block the Arcanist. I think they should have just went for Broke. Okay, so they had another one, and that sucked. And then I didn't draw like a flicker effect, which is what I actually wanted. Finally become the Monarch. And I named Ponder because I realized at this point, this person only has Ponder in the graveyard, so they won't flashback anything unless they've actually drawn something. Which apparently they did, so that worked out pretty well. And because they didn't, they made what I think is a mistake of not swinging out. So again, like this slow burn isn't working very well. If they had swung out, what would have happened is I would... so I'd probably trade both of these. I'd lose the Palace Jailer and protect the Meddling Mage that blocks here. And then I would kill 2 tokens, and I would take 5 damage. 6 damage, they swing with this too. So I go to 1. And then what? Like, next turn, okay, so all of this is dead, like, it's not getting any bigger. And then I need to, there's gonna be 5 tokens and an Arcanist left. And I have 5 creatures, so I need to do something, and this doesn't help me. And then I'm at 1, so I can't fetch, I can't have black, I can't Vile black. I don't have, they get the Monarch, and I can't attack, so I can't get the Monarch back. Like, I think just attacking with everything here was so clearly right, and if they had done it last turn, I don't know the math that they did last turn, but certainly this turn, it was right. And they didn't do it. So then, the game was made easier for me than it had to be. I don't remember if it mattered. I.e., I don't remember if I ultimately won. I think I lost. So this ends up being significant that I remembered to do it during the upkeep, because that happens. And not only does it rob them 5 mana, it makes them not able to lethal me with those tokens. So that was important. Okay, so now, for a moment, this player's waking up like, oh, maybe I should attack with everything. Okay, so at this point, I thought, what the fuck? How did they get tokens from Stifle? So it turns out, I think they stifled their own ability, and then had, like, they stifled Dreadhorde Arcanist as it was resolving, causing the stifle to be played. And then it was countered. So that was cute. So at this point, I almost made the mistake of like, oh, I really want to kill Arcanist, and then I'm going to go to 1. But no, I need to fetch next turn so that I can name Elemental. So that's what I do. And if I recall, this actually works, and I end up winning. Yes. So what was I thinking around here? Oh, I guess it's just, if this... Oh, right. When my opponent made that play, I actually knew I had already won. So that was important. When deciding how to block, yeah, Plague Engineer is important, and as a qualitative matter, you might think like, oh, I want to be at 2 so that I can play this. But actually, it runs deeper than that. Once my opponent declared his attack, I knew that nothing could happen that would make me lose, because I would block exactly like I did, and then if my opponent forces this, I protect Meddling Mage from red and I deal 5. If my opponent doesn't force this, I name Elemental and I swing for 7. So I think this was the race game. Or maybe there were 2 race games. But anyway, I won the race. GG. Yes, the Delver matchup requires extremely tight play, and it's about 50-50. On paper, you might think this deck looks favored, but a lot of Delver's strength is hidden, in that most decks play for the high expected value. Like, they try to do things that on average do change the board state in some nice way. But Delver doesn't have any of that. Like, everything looks like it's shit from Delver. Like, Wasteland, I'm going to lose a tempo just to trade 1-for-1 with you. Daze, like, I'm going to lose a lot of tempo to, like, conditionally counter you. Like, everything looks like it's just a bad 1-for-1. But the thing about Delver is it's not playing for the first moment in probabilistic terms. Like, it's not trying to maximize expected value. It's actually trying to maximize variance and then lower its own variance. So much the same way that when I have a lot of something, a resource in Magic, and I'm trying to kill my opponent, then I want to trade my a lot of something for their a little of something. Like, I have a lot of mana, I want to trade my lands for their lands. I have a lot of cards, I want to play discard spells. Variance is the same way. Like, I have a lot of protection from variance, that's the resource. I'm speaking now as the Delver player. I have Ponder, I have Brainstorm, I have, even in some cases, Preordain. I have only 2 colors, and all of my cards are low cost, and so generally variance runs as like the square root of the number of cards you draw, and if you look at the binomial distribution, the closer that the parameter of the binomial distribution is to 50%, the higher the variance is. So these decks that have like land counts that are closer to 50-50, like 23, 24 lands, or 22, 21 lands, you know, I guess that's more like Legacy. That's like, those decks have higher variance just because their binomial parameter is closer to 50%. That is, their fraction of lands is closer to 50%. So Delver has low land count, low mana cost to go with it, high cantrip, and then high redundancy. So now it's like I have a lot of protection against randomness. So how can I trade that? How can I like increase both my randomness and my opponent's randomness at the same time so that I can effectively take what I have a lot of and make my opponent feel the pain of not also having a lot of it? So how can I do that? Okay, I can play cards like Wasteland, Stifle, Daze. Like, those cards are high variance for me because if I invest in them and then my opponent doesn't get mana screwed, then it's kind of like, well, I wasted 1 mana off Wasteland. My Stifle's sitting dead in my hand. My Daze is sitting dead, or like I have to play 2-for-1 Daze or something. So that's how they do it. They say like, I have insurance, you don't. So let's play risky Magic. And so even though everything in Delver looks like it's a really bad card, it's like that kind of synergy. Actually, much like my deck. I would say my deck looks like it has really bad cards. But, well, maybe that analogy is different. My deck looks like it has bad cards because it plays cards that are like old and sort of out of scope of most people's radar in Legacy. But it's not because my deck is hugely synergistic. Most of the cards are actually good, but they're good on their own. With Delver, the whole thing really only works as an ensemble. Like, Delver couldn't work as like a deck without Wasteland, Stifle, and Daze. Like, it's not just like a tempo deck. It's a deck that specifically tries to lower its own variance and then raise both people's variance. So that's why a strategy like that is so 50-50. Like, you think, I'm like Death and Taxes, I should have a great matchup. I have Swords to Plowshares, I have Plague Engineer, like, everything's looking good. They only have 1 or 2 names of removal spells, and I have Meddling Mage. Like, why isn't this matchup more than 50-50? And it's because Delver can make so much go wrong, and it's hard to it's hard to have more than like a 60-40 match against something that's playing that variance axis, because at least like 10% of the games I'm not even going to be playing Magic, if not more like 15 or 20%, because they're helping me to not be able to play Magic. At least 10% I don't even play, probably, and at least another 10% I'm playing, but I had to mulligan to avoid the fate of not playing. So, so that's how they get it back. Like, okay, now I have to mulligan more carefully, so now I lost a card. And so even though their cards are bad, they have one more card than me. So then, like, that's how they sort of, like, grab it back, even though they're playing, like, these inefficient cards, like, or not inefficient, but, like, these cards that look like they could be liabilities, like Stifle, like Daze. Let's go to game 2, but be right back. Okay. I don't remember if this even went to game 3 or not, so I guess we'll see. Pontiff. Ah, cheaper than Engineer. Okay. Engineer is important because it's a static effect. So, like, sticking around. But, you know, if you have to play Pontiff, that's close. So I'm actually wondering why I fought over the first swords on the Delver. Why didn't I do that? Ah, yes, I remember. Because when Force of Will cannot be Pyroblasted, that's, like, pretty good. So, like, maybe one could argue I shouldn't have swords in the first place. But once I did, the question of if I should trade Force of Will plus Force of Will, I guess, for it, like, yeah, that's probably the best time to do it. Play around both Stifle and Wasteland. Which is important here, unlike normally, because... Okay, so... Actually, I was keenly aware of this as I was playing the match, but because I'm now 7 rounds in of casting this, I kind of forgot to mention it until now. My opponent brainstormed, and then did not make a land drop, and they didn't shuffle. So at this point, I was aware, like, okay, I have choices. They would not have not played a Wasteland, because, like, or at least, they might do that, but if they did, I think it would be wrong, because they should know that I wouldn't not play land, just because I thought, like, they're sandbagging Wasteland after they already brainstorm locked themselves. So I presumed, like, I gave my opponent the credit, like, okay, you don't have Wasteland. And I was right about that, as it turns out. And hopefully it's also true that my opponent wouldn't have sandbagged Wasteland if they had it, because that would be the right play. But I thought to myself, all 3 choices look reasonable here. So... One, playing Soul Herder is reasonable, because even though it doesn't quite play around Daze, it's pretty clear that if I play Recruiter thereafter and then don't get that dazed, and then my opponent then draws the second card that they lock themselves in, then I'm going to play Soul Herder. And, wait, let's see. Have they drawn a card yet? Draw 3 cards from Brainstorm. No, that's me. Brainstorm. Okay, so they're actually 1 card in right now. So they brainstormed at end of turn? No, in their main missed. And then I played a land and decided... Okay, right. So there's 0 cards there right now. I played land, and now I'm thinking about what to do, and I chose Recruiter, and I got it dazed, which was the risk. I could have played Remorseful Cleric, which would just be like generic board development. Probably can't counter that. And then I could play Soul Herder, which is like the less risky, more efficient play. But then I thought to myself, if I play Soul Herder, they then draw the first card. And then I guess I could have played Recruiter then after. And maybe that would be like a better sequence. I actually think in retrospect I should have done that. Because at least, even if they have the heads up play to hold on to daze, like, nah, Soul Herder doesn't do anything, it's just a 1/1. I'm not going to daze it. Then I would be better off. Because I could top deck a land, I could then still choose not to play Recruiter if I don't top deck a land and play Remorseful Cleric instead, and Soul Herder starts getting bigger. So if they have daze, then this is the worst play. On the other hand, I was also thinking, my opponent hasn't taken any actions yet. What if they have Red Elemental Blast? Or what if they have Lightning Bolt? Then I could punish them by playing Recruiter, and then playing Recruiter for, like, Flicker Wisp or something. Which was, I think, exactly what I was thinking about doing. Like, okay, I'm going to get the pressure on, and you have to bolt my Recruiter. Okay, so then you bolt my Recruiter, and then I'm going to play Soul Herder after that, and you're going to die because that's too much damage too quick. And I still have my chain going if I top deck anything, like a Baleful Strix or a Recruiter. I still have the Soul Herder, and even right now, I can, like, Soul Herd Recruiter, Soul Herd Flicker Wisp, the Remorseful Cleric, like, it's going to get big fast. So if you're holding red spells, the play I made is best. If they're holding daze, then playing Soul Herder is probably best. If they're holding daze and no red spells, Soul Herder is best. If they have daze and red spells, then Remorseful Cleric is best. So that's kind of the breakdown of the situation, and I guessed wrong. So then, because I guessed wrong, I lost. To add insult to injury, I drew the 1 land. Obviously, I couldn't have known that, but now I'm, like, top decking. So this was another one of those situations, like I mentioned earlier, where I had to, like, use my own personal force of will to not think about the play. Like, okay, just focus on this match, and then after this game is over, then in between, during the 3 minutes, you can do whatever thinking you want to do and get it out of your system and come to game 3, which looks more and more like, it looked more and more like there would be a game 3. Then you can come to game 3 with, like, a fresh perspective, with, like, nothing hanging over your head. So I was trying to, like, focus here, and it's like, well, there's not much to think about, like, I just have lands, so whatever, I lose. Yeah. So I'm keeping the land in case I draw a Brainstorm. I think I actually do draw a Brainstorm on this next draw step, if I recall. But it wasn't enough, even if I did. Oh, no I didn't. Okay, so I lost. That was not very close. Well, it was close. Like, I thought I had it. I was like, oh my god, I made it in. I thought I had it when my opponent brainstorm locked himself, but I think that might have been part of why I didn't respect that decision enough, where it was like, which one of these 3 cards did I play? Did I play around Daze? Did I play around red spells? I thought about it, sure. I'll give myself that much credit, but I didn't respect that decision the way I would have if I wasn't acting like the game, or at least I wasn't thinking the game depended on it as much as maybe I should have. So, penance for my sins, I lost. So now we're on to game 3, and I'm doing my best to make sure that my little gaff doesn't cost me top 8. So I see that, and there's a Vial. Vial's good early, so I keep it. I probably should have technically drawn the land first, but there's no Thoughtseize, so it doesn't matter. And I knew that, so it's like, whatever. I sequence around Daze. Or, wait, I don't even play the swords? That's interesting. Oh yeah, I want to see if it flips first, I guess. And then it didn't flip, so I'm like, whatever, I don't even care then. So it's more important that Strix resolves, but if Vial resolves too, then it's cool. So this is now like a really good hand. Like, Strix is a key card here, because it answers everything, and it draws a card. So generally, whenever you can get a Strix not Pyroblasted, that's what you want, because having Strix dazed costs a lot. Having Strix forced costs a lot, but Pyroblast is actually advantage to the Pyroblast player when they answer Strix that way. So that's like, you have a chance to play it when they're tapped out, you do it, usually. So I'm waiting here for a chance to bounce the Pithing Needle to get like 2 key Vial activations. That's what I was thinking. Because otherwise this hand might come out kind of slow versus this kind of threat. Like, especially if they have something like the 1 damage to all on my side. A Blazing Volley, that's right. So I attempted at this end of turn, and it resolves. So that was a huge deal. And I think I messed up the sequencing between Swords and Soul Herder at some point in this tournament. Maybe that's right now. You want the Soul Herder to see the Delver get exiled, and I decided that wasn't important, I guess. So yeah, I mean, oftentimes there's like this setup where you're like, ah, fuck, I made a mistake, and then you have to like show the card to your opponent. Like, alright, I made a mistake, but I'm still going to use this card to beat you. And so, yeah, I mean, here, so much is at stake, so you're not going to, like, hold on to your pride and not show the card. But sometimes people will go, like, okay, I'm just not going to show the Soul Herder now, because I don't want my opponent to know that I fucked up. No, just show it. But I fucked up. That was bad. And then I think that in the stunning, like, I was stunned by having fucked up. And so I fucked up again shortly after, if I recall. At least that fuck up chain happens sometime during this tournament. Like, sometimes I forget to follow my own advice, which is when I made a mistake, pause everything if you have time. Like, just take like 30 seconds, go like, okay, I'm not going to play Magic for 30 seconds because that was super embarrassing. And I know I'm not in the right frame of mind. I need to stop. But here, I guess I didn't have that luxury, so I didn't stop. In fact, I felt I was in such a rush that I didn't name Rogue because I knew it was great. I was thinking, do I name Merfolk or Rogue? And then I named Rogue because I was like, there's a heuristic that normally it's better to name Rogue. And then, I remember that because in the past I knew that Brazen Bar would die to it, and so I was like, okay, that's like slightly better, I should do that. And then this time I just like remembered I should name Rogue, but I didn't remember why. And then the Brazen Bar died too, and I was like, oh my god, okay, this is over, I win now. I was like so absorbed in the match and absorbed in playing quickly that I didn't even realize that was going to happen until it already did. And then here, like, yeah, I could probably get in for, like, a few more points with Baleful Strix, but at this point, it's clear that I don't want to think. Like, I don't want to spend time thinking about how much damage I could get, but I want to get damage that I could, like, obviously, safely get. And so, I think in between those two turns, I, like, realized, like, okay, actually, obviously, Strix is safe to swing with one, but, I didn't realize that the turn before, so I just didn't want to think about it, so I just did, like, kind of a passing play. Okay, so then... you know, through sheer card advantage of getting the 2 for 0 with Plague Engineer, and then threatening, like, actually even more, I was going to eat that, you know, he resigned. So that's how I made top 8. And then I played against Death and Taxes, which is a really one-sided matchup. In fact, I played the second game of this match very poorly. So, good thing it's so stacked, because I did not play in a way that deserved to win in game 2. So at this point, I decided to not brainstorm first. Sometimes you do it in the main phase, because you might draw a Vial, or you might draw a Ponder. Or in a case when you don't have Vial at 1, you might draw a 1-drop. You might draw 2 1-drops. In this case. But here, I remember specifically thinking, let's say I brainstormed into Force of Will. Do I know if I should put Force of Will back? Not if I do it in my main phase. I don't know if my opponent's going to put Stoneforge Mystic on the stack. But by the end of my opponent's turn, I will have a better idea of if Force of Will have been valuable or not. And so, if my opponent plays something, then I'll brainstorm in response and keep Force. If my opponent doesn't play anything, then Force of Will is trash. It will probably never get used for the rest of the game, and I will gladly put it back. So that's why I decided to wait. Even though I could have been, like, missing a chance to play Vial number 2 or whatever. And actually, I also thought, if I recall, I'm not 100% sure I thought this much, but I think I thought that even if I draw a second Vial, I'm not keeping it. And in fact, in this case, I didn't keep it. Because I need some gas too. And I need some lands because there are certain things I have to cast, like swords that might have to like go through Thalia, Rishadan Port's Wastelands, blah blah. Okay, so you see I make that mistake again. And actually no, it was okay, I guess, to fetch Scrubland. Yeah, that was fine. And then I missed my land drop on purpose to get a double tithe. But actually, playing the Scrubland, it looks like it was a mistake, and it certainly was not the right play, but it wasn't a mistake in, like, the way I thought about things. I actually tried to click the plains, and it was a misclick. So, I tried to play plains, but Scrubland came out, and I was like, ugh, okay, it's been a long day. Like, I'm sure more of this is going to happen, let's just move on. So they actually did a play I did not anticipate there. They sourced in response so that I couldn't save it with Flicker Wisp, and also the fatigue caused me to not think about that. It was, I think, also fatigue that I wasn't thinking about, like, what if my opponent has naturally drawn Palace Jailer? Because that would be pretty damning right now. They would get the Recruiter back. I'm going to take everything. Now, I could have been a little safer here. I think, in fact, not only was it a mistake not to envision the Recruiter possibility, it was... Okay, I'm trying to pause this, but it keeps, like, being delayed. So, it was a mistake not to remember that I could get Palace Jailered from their hand, and that would be really bad. I think it was also a mistake to Vial the Soul Herder just to take the 1/1. Like, I guess if I don't do that, then I guess I'm, like, open to swords, but I could have just not attacked, right? So maybe the best play last turn was actually don't attack, and then play Palace Jailer, and then pass. Take the Mother, and then pass. What did they get? Yeah, they got Mother. So take the Mother and pass. Then I would have Force of Will up for Palace Jailer, naturally drawn. And, yeah, I'd have to pitch this. That kind of sucks, but I didn't know I'd draw the Recruiter. And I'd be the Monarch, so, like, it'd be pretty good. I think this was a misplay, but I ended up, like, avoiding the punish. It's just misplays all over the place now. Like, I had the gall to think that I had 5 misplays because I wrote 5 misplays in my notes. But I knew that I didn't take the time to peruse my my games because I was so tired of this tournament at the end of it. And by the next day, I wasn't thinking, like, let me go back to review my logs. So now that I'm finally seeing it, like, no big surprise. I played like shit at the end. Well, I played like shit in this match. I actually played the semis and the finals pretty well, I think. But this was trash level. So now I'm, like, ready if they have Vile or Mother. And everything's, like, going, like, yeah, I didn't play well, but I'm Esper Hate Bears, so it doesn't really matter. I get all the cards. Okay. Good thing he was playing Death and Taxes, because if it was Delver and I played like that, probably wouldn't be a win. And then this game, I managed to fuck up even more. Am I surprised they cited a Needle here? Oh, this refers to the Delver game. I don't remember if I knew that there was a Needle in that list. Theo Jung, I think, did have a record on MTG Goldfish, so I think I did know that that was coming. No, actually, no. I think his list on MTG Goldfish did not have it. So then I guess I didn't know. I'm not sure. But it wasn't something I, like, thought a lot about until it actually happened. Much like the Winter Orb earlier, too. Like, I wasn't really thinking about it. So, like, I do my best to think about as much as possible. I think I'm, like, a very analytical player, but there is a lot of shit that I didn't think about. Hey, I got the Underground Sea. I finally did it. I played around having a black source for Tithe. And moreover, I did it on purpose. That's the important part. I was so giddy. I finally did it right. So, yeah, I guess this match, I finally did one thing right. You know, it was the first time I did it right, even though later on I played very poorly. So here I do the right thing. You know, he does that. I can't let him play land and then GT swing me. So then I have to proactively do that, and then now things are not looking great. Like, I'm a little mana screwed. I have the answer, but it looks like things are a little dicey. And I don't get the other black because I don't need it. So I take... This was actually something I thought about for a long time. I think I used a lot of match clock to think about, like, okay, I can play... I can just play... What was it? Relic Order, take the Umezawa's Jite, or I can play Relic Order, take the Revoker, and then threaten to sideline the Jite for one turn by removing from combat whatever creature... Well, I would use Recruiter. I'm going to block the Recruiter and then flicker it away. So that was my plan, and why did I do that instead of perhaps the safer take GT with Relic Order? because this is like pretty unsafe. Like, not only am I now dependent on like a combat trick going through instead of like I'm just gonna take the equipment, but also I'm turning on their vial too. Like that revoker was truly symmetric. So why did I think that this was a good idea? Because I concluded that my hand is very slow. It's unlikely theirs is equally slow. And so I don't think that I could, through 2 Rishadan ports, like, yeah, I could play 1 more black spell, but that's it. So, like, I think I need my vial. So I think I need this whole, like, indirect trick to actually work. And then next turn, if nothing special happens, then I am going to be online. So the risk would pay off in that, like, if it worked this turn, then I probably wouldn't have to worry about it again. And it does work. But if they have, like, their other Revoker, they usually have, like, 2 sometimes, then it could have been a problem. Okay, so actually, at this point, I got Brazen Borrower instead of my 3rd copy of Relic Order, and I believe that was a mistake. I thought Brazen Borrower is safer because there will come a time when my opponent has enough mana to, like, do any number of GTA activations, or, like even 4 mana is, like, almost, that's, like, enough. Like, what if I try to take it, and then they go like, well, I have Swords to Plowshares, and now I can equip it. But Brazen Borrower for sure gives me next turn, because they can't, like, re-equip it while it's in combat. So it's, like, a much safer play. But we'll see why that ends up being something I regret. So this was pretty risky, or at least when I was, like, beginning the combat step, I thought, like, wait, can I actually do this? What if they have Thalia? And then I remembered. So apparently the other player had a similar epiphany as they were resolving the vial activation. Like, oh, I actually cannot play Thalia, or put Thalia into play. Okay, so see, this happens, and I knew that would happen. So I knew, like, okay, I'm not actually gonna be able to, like, hold this up forever, because there was this idea that, like, maybe they would have to sacrifice Stoneforge Mystic just to get me to even play the Petty Theft. But no, they can tap me out of it unless I'm willing to stay, like, super up all the time, and then I'm not really developing my board. So I end up having to use it this way, right away, and therein lies the problem. Yes, it's true that Relic Order would have had a problem against Swords to Plowshares, but Brazen Borrower simply has a problem in and of itself, which is that it's not a permanent solution, and I don't have a permanent solution now, thanks to that happening. So what am I going to do now? So this was the other thing that was like a shit level play from me. It was correct to cast Recruiter, because, or at least it was considerable to cast Recruiter. Like, it's not just some obviously wrong play. Because the idea was to get Flicker Wisp, and then be able to flicker the GTA in combat. But actually, they upped it to 3, and they didn't do much at 2. So, like, what do I think they have? They have 3 to 4 Flicker Wisps in the list. I should have considered, and I didn't. So I will consider this a mistake anyway, because I didn't think about it. I don't know what would be the right play if I did think about it. They flickered my Vial in response. Now, what if instead I had Vialed the, then I could have gotten, Palace Jailer. Then I guess what I would do is jail the Stoneforge Mystic, and then I guess they would Flicker Wisp, and then remove this, so I'd probably be pretty boned, actually, if I did that. Okay, so what else could I do? I could just say go, and then the plan is, like, I'm just gonna, like, storm the board and, like, overpower the GTA. Or I can Vile the the Recruiter, and then hard cast Leonin Relic Order. That play is also boned to just a single Flicker Wisp, because they will flicker the Relic Order at my end of turn, and then equip the GT and swing. So either way, the GT is here to stay. So I might as well just live with it. And in that case, doing what I did here was pretty fucking stupid. Because at least I could have Viled the Recruiter. I think, actually, yeah, at the time I realized immediately afterwards, my best play, and now I'm remembering, was Vile the Recruiter, get Soul Herder active, whatever, they get GT, but what are they going to kill? Like, Mother is a good one, kill the Recruiter, and then I still have Soul Herder at 2/2 with Baleful Strix. Like, I can outrace the GT in terms of card advantage. So, this was really dumb, thinking like, oh, I'm going to be cute and Flicker Wisp. Like, no, just get the Soul Herder and lock out. So now that it got flickered, I have to be like, okay, well, now I'm stuck. I don't have my chain anymore, no more tutoring, and they're going to get one GT trigger. Let me try to at least minimize the losses. Because I still have this whole board, they still have only 2 cards after the draw step. If this works, then even if they kill like the 2 most vulnerable creatures, I probably win. And if I do, it's because the deck carried me, not because I actually played well, because that didn't happen. So I attack with what I can. At this point, I'm starting to think about like conserving time for game 3 in case my fuck up really mattered. But now they're on top deck, and it looks like I'll probably clean up in like this very turn, actually. Yeah, so I just go with everything, I think. Right? Oh, I did that to stop Batterskull. Like, they have to show me the Batterskull first, and then I would just know not to swing, and then I go like that, and they lose. Whew! Was I surprised the Needle came in against me, knowing that Needle was in the list? No. If Needle is in the list, I think it makes perfect sense for them to bring it. Because Vile is a huge card in that matchup. Time for another Delver. And then I'll show the finals, and after that, I'll turn off the stream because I have to go to work tomorrow. By the way, is there a way that I can like easily split videos into 1-hour segments so I don't have to have like a long video? I'm sure I could look this up once I get to like the editing stage, but I'm not sure if I'll have time to edit until maybe this weekend. So nothing really like strategic happening, like all the choices are pretty obvious. Until now, I choose not to block because I know that the chain is more important, and I think my opponent detects this as well, which is why they played like they did. And then I think once I go for the chain, they actually bolt it, which gets me a little worried, if I'm being honest. Yep. And they correctly bolt the Recruiter because the chain is more important. They also see that a Delver blocker is less important than the chain. So here I think, wow, that's a blunder. Like, don't they know I have Giver? And yeah, that cost them a lot because they wouldn't have normally just like bounced my Giver. That's not a good play. And then later on, they end up getting tricked again by the same thing. I thought that this was like this was wrong, and I can't blame them for it because we were all so tired, I imagine. But this, yeah, they lost the Delver Secrets for free. So at this point, I'm like, okay, because that happened, I went from like probably losing, like probably 40, maybe even 30%, to like I'm probably in the driver's seat now. Like that Brazen Bar would take so long, and I can keep up some pressure along the way. Like I could win a race if I just drew anything right now. And then they have like one of the best top decks, but I think I end up top decking well enough that I actually win. Yeah, I draw that. That's like the best top deck in my entire deck. Now, what do I do to keep the chain going? Oh, right. I make it so that they can't bring back Lightning Bolt. See, that was the situation I mentioned earlier, where sometimes you construct the Soul Herder loop late, and you're so resource starved, you need something that you can use right now, or else the Soul Herder loop is going to go away. That's when Brazen Borrower can be good outside of depths. And then it's also providing me the answer to this Brazen Borrower. So that was a huge win for the Borrower. And then now I have my Violet 4, so I can answer the Dreadhorde Arcanist again. I don't know if I missed a chance to play around Stifle there. I forgot if he was tapped out. Okay. That was that. It's a good hand. It has Vile with the protection for it. And then I correctly recognize that this is one of the few times that you actually want to like force back over the Vile. This deck is super resource hungry, so maybe I shouldn't say few times, but like you definitely don't always fight back. But in this case, I knew like this is a little risky. I want to wait to Tithe, but they could daze it. So then I want my Vile. So I did that to fish for Stifle, and then they actually were goaded into responding. So then I got my Tithe off. So I guess that Vile Tap was, like, possibly useful. So right here, I think I decided to play my swords into Daze. Because even if they had it, then I could play Plague Engineer and maybe stop the Dreadhorde Arcanist from getting card advantage. And also, it's important to save that mana because I have so many 3-drops that I want to play one next turn. So I think I go for it. Oh, no, I guess not. Well, serves me right for trying to read my own mind. Here again is the same mentality, like, you could argue I could just save Strix and it would for sure resolve next turn. But, I guess I wanted Mage to resolve more. So I played the Strix, because I don't know if that was right. Actually, I think I should have played Mage and named Lightning Bolt, expose Mage to Daze, and then for sure have the Strix. I think this was wrong. So, yeah, that was wrong. And then here I make the most cathartic play of the tournament for me. So now, I see my opponent has 2 Delicious Humans, and I'm thinking, they have 2 cards, so yeah, it could be Force. But if it's Force, and they have to use it, then I don't see them winning this match ever. This game, or I guess this match, because the match would be over. So, if it's Force, I don't care. And if I top deck a land, I don't care about Daze. But if I don't top deck a land, how can I still make sure I wipe these 2 fuckers out? And that's when I saw the Meddling Mage in my hand. Good thing I played it the way I did, I guess. I even mistapped for it. That's cute. Why did it get stuck on this? What the fuck? Wait, what happened? Okay, well I play Plague Engineer and wipe this all out and the game's over. So here's the finals. So at this point, even though in Legacy Chat, Callum had said that he was playing, he did say, I'm playing UG Omnitel. I didn't read that chat because I was busy in the tournament. And I had actually assumed that Callum was playing Hogak. And I was keeping this hand as though he was playing Hogak. Because, you know, this is a good hand against Hogak. Like, it doesn't have Remorseful Cleric, but it's got card advantage, it has force. Like, you have to be able to play a fair game against Hogak, too, because sometimes they just, like, try to make a bunch of things. And if you try to mulligan for, like, exactly the right hate, then you can't even beat their, like, average, just, like, play to the board hands. So I kept this, and then it turned out, good thing I did, because Callum's actually playing something else. So I still don't know what that something else is. At this point, I think, oh, Miracles with a bad draw. So I'm like, okay, then in that case, the first thing I'm going to do is Mother, so that they have to, like, immediately Swords it, or else the rest of the game is, like, super complicated for them. And then it's still, like, I'm still buying into my Miracles belief, I guess. I haven't seen anything to, like, make that not the case. And then I play Scrubland. I don't know why I did that. Maybe this was the time that I misclicked. So now, at this point, I know what's going on. I don't know that it's green exactly, but I know it's Show and Tell. And just in time to know that. So now I know it's green. And after this panic over the Meddling Mage, now I know what's up. Like, why would countering Meddling Mage be so important? Because this deck doesn't have removal. So now I'm aware that these two, Giver, Mother, like, they're useless. They're just, like, one power, pretty much. Their toughness doesn't even matter. So I'm just like, okay, I need to, you know, apply the beats. I need to try to, like, get the Soul Herder loop going. And then I don't play the Ponder because I want the Force Pitch. And I know that they don't have removal, so I'm just like, I need to do damage. It doesn't matter if I'm protecting anything. Yeah, that can't resolve. Another key thing is that Callum tapped out for that, so I knew he couldn't play Veil in response. So even if I was kind of borderline about, like, do I need to counter Drawn for Dreams, I would have been pushed over the top by the fact that this was one of the few times I could force without having to fear getting Veiled. So here I'm thinking about sequencing, and I think about, like, do I want to Strix first to have more to Brainstorm, or Brainstorm first to guarantee that I'll have the Shuffler? And I spent some match clock thinking about this, and I ended up not being able to do a calculation in any reasonable amount of time, so I decided just to, like, sort of, not even an approximation, I won't even give myself that much credit. It was more like just a gut feeling. Like, okay, I think Brainstorm, like, I have some experience doing these computations, and my intuition is that Brainstorm first is going to be more valuable because I have this shit card. I need to guarantee it's gone for good. I think that's more valuable than, like, the what if I get another shit card that off of Strix that I then want to get rid of, and then please draw me a fetch land. Like, I couldn't prove it on time, but I thought that this was the right play. Oh, so actually, let me discuss sideboarding here. Because even though we already went over show and tell, I did actually make some adjustments for Callum's specific deck. Or not, I didn't know 75 because he hadn't posted it yet, but I did know, obviously, that it was blue-green instead of blue-red. So there are some adjustments that had to be made. And those adjustments become relevant this very match. Callum had told me that if I didn't make those adjustments, I would have lost this game. Because he would have won off. So that adjustment is that I played Sphere of Resistance. I put that in, or Sphere of Dampening Sphere, and I put in Deafening Silence. I did not put in Enlightened Tutors, and then I took out all of these because they're all still bad. So then what did I do to put in 2 extra cards? Well, the third Swords is also terrible, so I cut that. And then I think I cut... What was it? I cut a Giver. That's right. Because they're bad. And I might have even cut like more Givers for some other random stuff too. But pretty much the important thing is that I brought the anti-storm stuff. So you won't necessarily see that come into play because you can't see Callum's hand, but at least you will see me play some of those cards. I wonder why I held on to the vial when I wasn't planning... Oh, because I have to draw this all anyway. Like, I'm brainstorm locked. That's right. So I'm playing around the Icefang Coatl here. And I didn't know at this point that there's only 1 Eureka in that list. I thought there was going to be 2 to 3. So it's important that I play this vial, because I'm aware that Callum likely has bounces. And I'm going to leave the vial on 2 to be able to replace the Meddling Mage when he tries to go off. So at this point, I make what is possibly a mistake. It's not that I forgot about the Coatl. I just thought, Eureka's not that important. I need to test the waters to see if I can start doing some damage, because I can't... If I let Callum live forever, I think he will actually win this matchup, because like it would be like a really long time. Like, this is one of those like limit statements. At t equals infinity, I lose. But if I did wait that long, like, eventually Callum's gonna find exactly whatever he needs, and he's gonna, like, bounce all my stuff in, like, 1 critical turn. Like, there does have to be a clock. And Eureka probably has fewer copies, and moreover, Callum signaled that he didn't have it, because he fetched 3 islands, rather than a snow-covered forest instead. So I thought, this probably isn't worth that much anyway. But then he tried to kill it with an Icefang Coatl, and then I started reconsidering. I think I should have just like went through my play, like, okay, it's not worth much, you want to kill it, it's just a 2-2. And I probably should have let it resolve. So I think that attacking might have been fine, but then changing my mind and like, no, I can't let that happen. Like, that was not very consistent. And I think it was a mistake. So at this point, Callum told me after the match, it was at this point that he would have went off. He said, I guess the play was probably Echoing Truth and then land Show and Tell. But because I played Damping Sphere, that wasn't possible. Because they didn't have he didn't have a soul land. So then he had to pass. Now, recognizing that Echoing Truth was probably a threat, even though I didn't know the list, I kept a Violet 2 and decided to play things as sorceries. So now, notably here, I wait for my opponent's draw step because I want my opponent to decide what card they're drawing before I show them what card I'm naming. Although I'm sure he knew. I'm sure he knew that I would name Show and Tell. That's pretty obvious. Keep it at 2 for Echoing Truth, which happens this very turn. Now here's the important sequencing bit. I have the land, so I actually have enough to put all 3 of my Meddling Mages into play. Given the possibility that my opponent could counter or could interject at any point with Echoing Truth, what should I name? And in what order? So the first pass I did through this logic was like, what is the set of 3 things as an unordered set that I'm going to name? And then after that, I would spell out the ordering. So I said, I'm going to name Eureka, Show and Tell, and Echoing Truth. Okay, so now what's the sequencing that like gives me the most protection? So what am I worried about? Well, let's say I named Echoing Truth with the one that I'm going to put into play during my opponent's draw step. Then they could just Echoing Truth. And then in response, and then I'm going to say like, okay, well, they already Echoing Truth, so then now I guess I'm going to name Show and Tell. Yeah, I would probably win. Because what would have to happen for them to win after I've done that is they would have to play a Soul Land, play Eureka, and then go off. And it would take a Soul Land to do that because Eureka would cost 5. So that didn't seem very good. Now, what if I played Echoing Truth first? But then they Force of Will. Okay, so am I still going to name Echoing Truth then? I guess now I only name, like, Show and Tell, and then Eureka, and then I lose to Echoing Truth. Okay. Echoing Truth and Land, I guess, because I know they already have Show and Tell. If they didn't brainstorm it away, which, why would they? So, here's the sequencing that I found that solved all the problems that I could think of. So I named Show and Tell first because that's the one that, like, I obviously want to name Show and Tell. There's no way I'm going to not name Show and Tell. And if you counter my second Meddling Mage, then I want to have named Show and Tell. So that's the one I know for sure. So that's the one I'm going to do. Whatever I do in my main phase, I'm going to name Show and Tell. And I don't want to wait until their upkeep to vial, or their draw step or whatever, to vial that in, because I just want to make sure that, like, let's say I did that instead, then I play a Meddling Mage, and I name, like, I name Echoing Truth or something. And then they, like, bounce it. They can't bounce it some other way because Rushing River costs too much, I guess. So, maybe what I was afraid of, I think, is if I wait to name Show and Tell during their upkeep, then they could force the other Meddling Mage, the second one that I play. So I would name, like, okay, I'm going to name Echoing Truth. I'm going to name Eureka. And then they're like, no, you can't play the one, like, the one that's going to name Eureka, I'll counter that. And then it's like, oh, okay, now I might lose to Eureka. So I play the one that I want for sure first. And then after that, I play a second Meddling Mage, intending to name Echoing Truth. Because they could Echoing Truth right now, and if they did, then I would change my mind. Okay, I'm actually going to name Show and Tell. And then I'll play another one, put another one into play, and I'll name Eureka, and that's GG. But if I don't name Echoing Truth, they could end of turn Echoing Truth, and then I have to take a risk. So I name Echoing Truth right now. And then finally, after they've decided what card to draw, I play the last piece of the puzzle, and they resign. And so ended the tournament. Let's see, how would I best share my sideboard guide? I could share that. Actually, I'm not sure if I would like people to have a complete script of what I do all the time. I'll think about it. But anyway, either way, whatever I decide, I'm not going to do it right now because I have to get to sleep. So thank you for tuning in. Please follow my channel. And hopefully we can do this more often. I'll stream more, and if it catches a following, then I'll stream even more than that. So starting tomorrow, I think I will stream probably most nights, because I end up playing MTGO most nights. Most of the time, it'll be around probably 8:30. And the only reason I would not is if I like got a date or something, or like work really ran late, or I was like super tired. But most of the nights when nothing else is going on, I end up playing Legacy Leagues, and the league restarts tomorrow. So that's kind of my plan. Weekends will probably be a little more sporadic. I'll probably try to do most of the challenges, but I won't stream them because I don't play as well when I'm on stream, and when I'm playing a challenge, I'm trying to focus on the challenge. But I will probably do follow-up streams if anything significant happens in the challenge to expose those details. And then Fridays and Saturdays might be a bit different, but I'm not quite sure how that'll work out yet. But most of the weekdays I should be around 8:30 Eastern time. And I'll play leagues and stuff with this deck. So please tune in, please follow, and I hope to see you again. Good night.